Hey guys, welcome to part 2 of What If Neji Killed the Entire Hyuga clan. If you enjoy the video then like, share and subscribe and also comment your thoughts as it inspires me to make more such videos, and remember to check out my playlist section for other interesting stories. So let's get started. Chapter 13. Oh great, a maths test. The Chunin exams are held biannually, cycling through each of the 5 hidden villages as hosts, and act as a test to see if any genin from the hidden villages are ready to be promoted to Chunin. The specifics of the exams are left to the village hosting, but traditionally consist of 3 parts. The first tests the knowledge and psychological preparedness of the genin, usually through some form of written test, outright psychological warfare, or both. The second primarily functions to pit the genin against each other in a test of cunning and creativity, under the pretense of testing their survival training. The third is almost always a competitive tournament. None, any, or all of the genin who have made it this far may be promoted depending on their performance, no matter how many matches they actually win. The Chunin exams are incredibly difficult. Despite well over 100 genin often being sent to compete, usually only a tiny fraction of that will pass. If any more than 10 pass in one exam, the host village will be looked down on for having low standards. On the contrary, if too few or none of a hidden village's genin pass without good cause, then this can sour diplomatic relations between them and the host village. These issues are exacerbated by the fact that the hosting cage is the one ultimately responsible for deciding who from the finalists pass. For the competing genin, the rewards are substantial. Not only does the winner of the final tournament receive a significant cash prize, Chunin are given greater freedoms, and permitted to take on harder and more lucrative missions. And for the children of ninja clans, it is often necessary to reach Chunin rank before being considered a true adult, and doing so allows them access to certain clan hidden jutsu they had not previously had access to. The exam is high risk, high reward, however. In stages 2 and 3, it is entirely legal for the genin to kill each other. Hokage's Guide, page 483, written by Sarutobi Hiruzen. Naruto led Team 7 up the staircase. This wasn't through any sort of leadership, he was just the most excited to be there. He paused on the second floor, though, looking at the crowd of genin he saw there. Hey, guys, what are you all doing here? Chunin exams. Kiba growled back. Most of the Konoha kids had shrugged off their dislike of Naruto once he'd explained the village's problem with him. Kiba, however, as the one Naruto had pranked the most, other than Sasuke, hadn't really gotten over his grudge. Makes sense your sensei wouldn't think you were ready. Naruto frowned. Oh no, we're attempting it, but I thought it was on the 3rd floor. This is the 3rd floor, said one of the genin, chuckling. Wait, what? Naruto blinked. He looked up to the sign, and it definitely said 3. Wait no, because, he jogged over to the window and looked down. Yeah, we are definitely only 2 floors up. A few more of the genin walked over to the window and looked down. Hey, he's right. Why is the 2nd floor labeled the 3rd? It's a genjutsu, dumbasses. Sasuke called from the staircase, where he and Hinata had paused on their way up. He's right. The Hyuga said, more quietly. Yeah, duh, Naruto exclaimed. I, of course, noticed that immediately. I totally realized about the genjutsu, just like you. A certain pink-haired genin called to Sasuke. He noticed her, gulped, and sidled back behind Naruto. The girl's face fell. I told you something felt wrong. Sakura rounded on Kiba. But no, sign says floor 3, you said. Idiot. Well, maybe if you'd. Team 8 devolved into scuffling as a sighing Shino moved to try and split apart his teammates. 2 of the genin gave each other significant glances and put their hands together. With a poof, the Chunin exam proctors appeared. I am embarrassed that almost worked on so many of you, said one. Let this be a lesson, said the other. You don't always need acute senses to overcome genjutsu. Sometimes you just need common sense. Get your asses upstairs. The 2 vanished. Fucking idiots. Sasuke shook his head, trying not to laugh. How goes their progress? Asked the 3rd Hokage, lighting his pipe. They're coming on in leaps and bounds. Kakashi answered. Sasuke would have passed his Chunin exams if he'd taken them instead of his genin ones. His brother's been going through the basics of genjutsu with him, and his grasp of tactics is what I'd expect of someone twice his years. Hinata's slowly branching out into summoning and lightning techniques, but that's only because she's mastered almost all her clan's hidden jutsu. Naruto lacks his teammates' skill, but in terms of physical strength and chakra well, if you'll forgive the term, he's a monster. He can use the 4th level of the training seal for limited time. Isn't that like swimming through cement? Hiruzen asked, eyes wide. How strong is he? In terms of sheer muscle, stamina and speed, almost on the level of guys not son. I had to subtly open the first gate so he wouldn't beat me in an arm wrestle. Kakashi shrugged. People are calling me lazy for delegating so much of their training, but frankly the results speak for themselves. He squinted. You didn't tell me Jiraiya was back in town. I assumed Naruto had told you. Oh, he did. Though he wanted to check that the fat old man who spied on girls' baths was really one of the legendary Sannin. On the subject of which, did he tell you about? His next volume will be released in a few weeks. The Hokage cackled. I've managed to get us both early copies. You're the best, boss. God of Shinobi, don't you ever forget it. They laughed together for a moment. And the Chunin exams. The third continued. You convinced them to compete. They're on their way to the written exam now. Did you have any trouble? Kakashi thought about it. Hey sensei. Naruto called to him, walking to training one day. You didn't tell me the Chunin exams were coming up. Oh yeah, those. Kakashi replied. Wanna compete? Hell yeah. He turned to his other 2 students. You too as well. Course. Absolutely. Well, that was quick. Kakashi assessed. I'm probably supposed to warn you that this will be very dangerous and result in lots of character development. Harder than dueling 2 missed Jonin on top of a river. Sasuke checked. Probably not. Then let's do this. After employing my flawless negotiation tactics, they all quickly agreed. Kakashi summarized. And I have every confidence they'll pass. Let's hope. Hiruzen drew on his pipe. You're stressed. Kakashi noticed the tension in his hands. The third huffed. You and your eyes, Kakashi. Of course I'm stressed. He pulled the pipe out. Konoha has a reputation, ever since Hashirama set up this whole system and sprinkled the tailed beasts like breadcrumbs for the other villages. Then Tobirama, then myself, we made it tradition to make the other villages look bad, and now we're paying for it. If Minato was here, everything would be fine, but it's been 12 years and nobody looms quite as large as he did. Who do I promote as my successor? Itachi can't negotiate to save his life. Jiraiya and Tsunade act like they'll light on fire if they walk into my tower. I am afraid for my village, Kakashi. You aren't dying yet. Kakashi tried for a chuckle. It came out hollow. Right. Not that I know of. Sarutobi looked down. But my senses aren't as sharp as they used to be. You can't be implying that someone will try to. Sabaku no Gara is competing in the Chunin exams. Oh shit. Kakashi moved to stand but Hiruzen darted a hand out and grabbed his. There is but one recourse. He said. Eyes not those of a grandfather, but a battle-honed ninja. The next time the Chunin exams fall on Konoha is in 2.5 years. Team 7 will be 15, old enough to be Jonin, old enough to garner reputation. Nobody will dare to move on us until then if, and only if, we use this opportunity to prove our strength. Sensei. Konoha has to win the exams. The third asserted. Fairly. Ideally, we need the finals to be 2 of your genin fighting each other. Because there's only 3 names with the potential to grow into this accursed hat. I believe one has already expressed an interest. They are children. Kakashi was surprised to find he was furious. They are ninja. The third replied. The hidden villages grow restless. Danzo schemes behind my back. One of our most prominent ninja clans is dead and the Akatsuki pulls strings in the shadows. I care about those children, Kakashi. But I care about my village more. Slowly, Kakashi unclenched his fists. This is why I didn't want a genin team. He muttered. I knew I'd get attached. That is why I made you take one. Hiruzen replied, his face softer. Over time I've learned that if ninja aren't attached to anything, all it takes is a strong enough wind to blow them away. Hinata was still in her seat as the rules were explained to the genin. 9 questions. 9 points. Get caught cheating. Lose 2 points. If your point count is positive before the end of the exam, you pass. TLDR. 5 slip-ups and you're out. Too generous. In her mind, but this was only the first stage of the exams. You have 50 minutes before the secret 10th question is revealed. Please begin. Hinata leaned back in her chair, unconcerned. She didn't even need to form hand seals, just to activate her Byakugan and wait for the answers to fall into her. Number 39. Number 33. -2 points. What? Exclaimed Hirin, 2 seats back, Sasuke. Blatantly obvious dojutsu abuse counts as cheating. Said Morino Ibiki, the proctor, with a cruel grin. I'd get working, kids. 10 seconds in and you're already in debt. Hinata grit her teeth. Alright then. Effort time. She opened the paper. Naruto was panicking. Written test. When the heck is a chunin going to have to take one of these? Especially the maths. One question about the arc of a throne kunai was asking for calculations even when the obvious answer was just, eyeball it. He wondered if that would get him partial credit. People around him were already scratching down answers, and both his teammates had already been caught out trying to cheat. How could they? That was just bad manners. Although, looking at some of these questions, it sure was tempting. Naruto gulped, and started praying for some sort of help. Outside, Naruto's shadow clone continued practicing the jutsu Jiraiya had shown him. It was tricky, but it built upon the other non-elemental techniques he actually knew how to do, so he'd probably have it sorted by the time the Chunin exams actually called on him to fight. Screwing his nose up, he went through the seals again. Naruto. Oh thank God, I was worried you'd been stupid and dispelled everything. The Naruto clone looked to his left. Sasuke. What are you doing here? Aren't you supposed to be in the exam? Sasuke rolled his eyes. I am in the exam, dumbass, this is a shadow clone. Come on, let's move. I think I'll have to split myself into 2 again, not that I don't trust you to do both parts of the mission, but, well, I don't. Hold on, slow down. Naruto clone held up a hand. What are we doing? Cheating, said Sasuke clone. Is that not why you're out here? What? No. Naruto clone was offended. I'm out here training while the real me does a test. You're cheating. That's against the rules. It's a ninja test. Sasuke clone admonished. You're supposed to cheat. Ooh. It's at times like these I remember you never technically passed the Genin exam. Come on. I was listening at the door and we have 3 main objectives. Find out what the questions are, find out what the answers are, then find a way to tell Hinata, all without getting caught. She didn't leave any clones outside, which sucks, because the ability to see through walls would be really useful right now. Konoha has a library. Naruto clone pointed out. We can probably get most of the answers from in there. Which doesn't solve the problem of seeing the question sheets. Sasuke clone mused. If they discover we're the shadow clones of certain genin they'll probably dock us points. Wait, we have to find some way of getting in there. Naruto clone asked. How? Sasuke, the guards are all chunin. The head proctor is the head of T&I. Alright, think of it this way. Sasuke clone posed. This is a prank. You need to find a way to. I don't know. Read one of the people's diaries, which is on their desk in front of them. What do you do? That set Naruto clone thinking. After a few moments, he looked up with a grin. Hey Sasuke. You can use the transformation jutsu properly, right? To look like a real person and not just a knife. I can. Sasuke clone nodded. In which case, I have an idea. Number 13, that's 5 failures. You're out. Ibiki watched one of his plants grumble and walk out the room. The first disqualification technically, and the pressure showed on the students' faces. He loved his job. He put a stern look on his face and swept his gaze across the room, making anyone looking at him avert their eyes. Then his ears pricked. In the distance, he heard some oddly familiar guitar chords. Then there was an intake of breath from outside the classroom door. The door slammed open. Body once told me the world was gonna roll me. Hokage-sama. Came the surprised yells from almost every student in the room. The third Hokage, Sarutobi Hiruzen, strode into the room with a manic look on his face. These genin do not possess correct writing materials. Hiruzen shouted. Morino Ibiki. Where is your will of fire? Your career will be reviewed after this day. But first. He put his hands together. Multi-pencil jutsu. He then proceeded to inelegantly hurl a good 3 dozen 2B pencils all over the room, much to the annoyance of most of the examinees. One of the chunin next to the door sighed, walking up and lightly tapping the third on the back. The disguise dispelled, leaving Kiba standing in his place. I can explain, Kiba said, in a whiny tone. What? Said the real Kiba from his seat, looking thoroughly confused. The chunin sighed and hit the standing Kiba harder, dispelling it. Subject 29, -2 points. What? But that wasn't me. I don't even know how to do that jutsu. As the Inuzuka boy threw his hissy fit, Sasuke slid the pencil, which he had grabbed out of the air as it went for his face, into a pocket on his jacket. A place where, if it had been hypothetically able to see, it would have had a great view of everything on his desk. Sasuke grinned. The game was on. Chapter 14. Oh great, a maths test. Part 2. The exam hall was in a very well hidden chaos. That Sasuke could see. There was razor wire spider webbing at least a third of the room. One of the proctors was definitely a puppet. Shino's bugs were competing with sand grains for airspace, and there was far too much condensation on the roof for a mist ninja not to be doing something. Time for him to contribute. The pencil in his breast pocket vibrated. There was only so much someone disguised as a static object could do, and Sasuke very deliberately wrinkled his nose. After a moment he leaned back, creasing his eyes up, and let out an almighty sneeze. A few of the proctors looked suspiciously at him, and he smiled at them apologetically. Nobody noticed that his pencil had vanished. Okay, here come the memories, said Sasuke clone, scribbling on a piece of paper as fast as he could. 1. Kunai arc physics. 2. He devolved into muttering. Don't you have perfect memory? Naruto clone asked. When the Sharingan is on, sure. Sasuke mumbled. Less so when it's memories I got from a pencil, there. He activated his Sharingan and scanned the paper. Okay. That's everything we need to know. Now we just need to worry about knowing it. He folded up the paper and put it in his pocket, looking up. The two were outside what was affectionately called the Lesser Library of Konoha, after the Great Library of Konoha had been destroyed in the Kyuubi attack. Sasuke had reasoned that it should contain all the knowledge required for the exam, if not in their normal stock, then because the proctors had probably put it there in case the graduates were enterprising enough to escape the exam hall. Alright, we've got a bunch of maths questions, obscure history, chakra theory, and for some reason, the forging process of a kunai. Once we learn the facts and equations, we can just dispel ourselves and our real minds should learn the information. What about Hinata? Naruto asked. Sasuke smiled. Leave that to me. Actually, my plan should work on you as well, when you inevitably forget what we've learned. Hey. Come on. We have 35 minutes before question 10 drops. They were able to get into the library, through a combination of Sasuke's big ancient clan, threatening and Naruto's, the Kyuubi's far less likely to destroy this place if I'm using it. Rationalization. A sufficiently terrified librarian told them that books on those subjects had recently been delivered. I told you so. And they were quickly directed to the appropriate location. After a combination of 10 Naruto clones, Sharingan perfect recall, and far more noise than was polite in a library, they were most of the way done inside of 10 minutes. That was when Lookout Naruto tapped Sasuke on the shoulder. So the theory that Hashirama passed over Madara for Tobirama due to an illicit sibling relationship was actually proposed by one Mr. Minato. What? Sasuke looked up. The blonde genin pointed towards the library entrance. We may have a problem. Itachi Uchiha walked into the Lesser Konoha library and smiled at the shaken-looking librarian. Good morning. He began. I'm looking for a few specific titles on the Warring States period. I was wondering if you could help me. Oh, Uchiha-sama, exclaimed the woman, upon noticing. Yes, of course I can help. Is this related to your brother's research? My brother's? Itachi asked, feigning surprise. Yes, he and the, Uzumaki child came in just a few minutes ago. She quite blatantly swallowed the word, fox, and pointed to a stack of shelves halfway down the corridor. I see. Excuse me for a moment. Itachi nodded politely to her, and quickly but calmly walked down to the correct aisle. A good 6 heads of hair, one black, most blonde, turned to face him. Oh, hey big brother. Sasuke waved absently, then went back to his book. What are you here for? Doing some research. Itachi replied. What about you? Doing some research. Sasuke smiled. That's not much like you. Itachi responded, leaning on one bookcase. And definitely not like Naruto here. We're looking for some information on who his parents were. Sasuke explained. You wouldn't happen to know who Minato Kusumaki was, would you? One of Jiraiya's older pen names, unless I'm mistaken. Itachi replied. And that lie was almost good enough for me to miss it. Sasuke, to his credit, only tilted his head in confusion. All 6 of the Narutos, however, did some combination of gulping and shifting on their feet. Not to mention the fact that you're both supposed to be in a written exam at the moment. Fuck. Sasuke growled. Quite. Itachi drawled. So what now? Well, Itachi pretended to think about it. I'm technically not a part of the examination system. Sasuke's face rose, but I am a Jonin of the Leaf, so I'm somewhat expected to stop these things. And if you couldn't even manage to infiltrate a friendly building without being caught, that's not exactly Chunin behavior. Oh come on. Sasuke complained. Well, looks like you got us. One of the Narutos said, sighing dramatically. I guess we'll just dispel ourselves and you can. I know how shadow clones work, Naruto. Crap. So what are you going to do? Sasuke asked, defiantly. You can't stop us without dispelling us. And even if you go to the exam hall and tell them to drop 2 points from us, we'll still be in the positive. Oh, but you're wrong on the first point, Sasuke. Itachi wiggled a finger. I know plenty of techniques that let me seal away shadow clones without dispelling them. Even one that summons the Grim Reaper, if you're interested. He cracked his fingers. Do you think I can get all 7 of you before one of you dispels yourselves? Or, I suppose, I'll only have to really bother with Sasuke, as he's the one with the perfect memory. Sasuke seemed to deflate. Alright, great, we're doing this. Can I ask one last thing before you do God knows what to us? Go on. Itachi allowed. Apologize to the librarian for us, okay. Itachi had a feeling he would someday regret the invincible reputation he'd built up in front of his little brother, as the kunai that came flying towards him would have definitely murdered a regular civilian. It wasn't a great throw, leading him to believe it was Naruto who had made it, 2 kunai attached clumsily by razor wire coming in behind him with the intent to wrap around his torso. He could catch them, of course he could, but they didn't mean to hit him, they just wanted to keep his hands busy. The remaining clones had decided that the fastest way to dispel each other was to stab each other to death. Creative. Watching as if in slow motion, which he pretty much was. Ninja or fast, he used one hand to grab one of the kunai flying towards him, ducking the wire so the second kunai went flying over his head, then used his other hand to individually pull the knives from the suicidal clone's hands. He then snapped the wire between his fingers, throwing one knife to hit the Naruto who was in the adjacent aisle he had probably substituted with the books, clever, and letting the kunai on the other end of the wire fly, but first, towards the furthest away Naruto in the group of 7, who was running through a familiar set of hand seals and transformation technique, very clever. The great fireball blew from Naruto, actually Sasuke's lips. Every other shadow clone there jumped backwards into the flames as Itachi, conceding defeat, stopped his suicide prevention and started weaving a much rarer set of seals. Even as the fire flew out into the aisle, it was sucked into a rotating sphere above Itachi's hand. This was not before the set of clones jumped through the flames, however, cooking themselves into puffs of smoke. After another second, there was quiet. That was very well done. Itachi said aloud. They must have had, 3 or 4 seconds to prepare. He turned around. The librarian was staring at him with a slightly horrified look on her face. Not to mention Sasuke casting the great fireball jutsu with, a clone that had a quarter of his chakra. Less. Itachi continued gushing. I've got to ask him about this when we have dinner tonight. The librarian pointed mutely at his hand, and the flaming sphere of death floating above it. Oh, right. I should probably take this somewhere it can explode harmlessly. Sasuke says sorry. He breezed past the woman out into the hallway. An owl flapped down from the corner of the room and landed on Hinata's desk. It prodded one of the options of a multi-choice on her paper, then fluttered back up to a nook near the ceiling. That isn't mine, Hinata said, deadpan, circling the option it had indicated. One of the proctors rolled his eyes, but didn't call her on it. Naruto and Sasuke, who had been dozing throughout the last 20 minutes, both suddenly jerked upright in their seats, exchanged glances, and started writing. Sasuke looked across to her, and their eyes met for a few seconds, before he went back to his test. Hinata shrugged, glad her teammates had finally come up with something, and turned back to her own paper. That was when she heard the voice. Hinata, it's me, don't react, don't dispel the genjutsu. She froze in place. Sasuke was still sat working diligently, but his voice was appearing in her head. I've placed you under an auditory genjutsu. His voice explained. Me and Naruto worked out the answers to just about all the questions. Did you get any yourself? Hinata tapped 3 times on the desk. Paused. Tapped 7 times. Paused. Tapped 6. You got questions 3, 6, and 7. She nodded minutely. Wow, okay. Well, here's what we got for most of the others. Team 7 filled in their answers in silence as the minutes ticked by. All right then, spoke up Ibiki, right as the clock hit 10:02. It is now time to reveal the final question. The espionage warfare across the room all stopped. Now, before I do so, I am going to offer everyone in this room a chance to forfeit. Doing so will still knock out your entire team, of course. What? Why would we do that? Ibiki grinned at them. Because once I give you this final question, failing to answer it correctly will mean instant failure. Your teammates will drop out too, of course, but more than that, you will be banned from ever taking the Chunin exams again. The room exploded into outrage. Hinata's knuckles went white on her table. Make your choice. Ibiki continued. If you drop out now, you'll be free to retake the exam in 6 months. Maybe then you'll face a nicer examiner. But if you're going to take the last question, be ready to put your future as a ninja on the line. The whole class felt the wave of killing intent he projected. There were a few moments of pressure. I'm out, said one of the genin Hinata was almost sure was a plant. Him and his sullen teammates walked dejectedly out the room. That opened the floodgates. 1, then 2, then 3 more teams dropped out, walking out the class with their heads held low. Hinata barely noticed them, she was a bit busy having an internal crisis. Naruto was going to stay put. She could see it. There was no doubt in his eyes, there never was, and she admired him so much for it, but it was going to ruin him. Sasuke had filled her in on their plan via genjutsu message, though was now strangely silent. They didn't have any more shadow clones on the outside. There was no way this new question could be answered by what they'd already learned. It would probably be some extra hard problem solving or, even worse, some philosophical question about what it meant to be a ninja. Will of fire or no? Naruto did not have the mindset to pass that sort of question. Sasuke wouldn't give up either. He had a clan behind him, an expectation to meet. His older brother was Itachi freaking Uchiha, biggest prodigy in his generation. It was up to her. Could she do it? Drop out? She didn't have a clan's expectations. Her clan was dead. Ranks and titles meant nothing to her, so why did she want to become a Chunin? To test herself against strong opponents, for one, but mostly to access higher difficulty missions. To get stronger. But was 6 months of B ranks much more useful than 6 months of knuckles down training? Would taking the question even matter, if one of her teammates got her disqualified? No, she could drop out. The question was whether she should. Naruto would be upset, but he would forgive her. She hated manipulating him, but he would. And if he was banned from ever becoming Chunin, she knew it would crush him. Better a temporary pain and some patience than permanent consequence. Shaking, one of her hands began to raise. That was when Naruto jumped on top of his fucking table. You must be out of your goddamn mind, he declared, sweeping his arm across the room to encompass all the proctors. If you think that anyone in this room is going to give up because of a stupid threat like that. The class eyes were on him now. Hinata's mouth fell open in shock. We're ninja, Naruto continued. We were prepared to face death in this exam. You think we're going to run away with our tails between our legs because of a ban from promotion? Not to mention the political ramifications. Sasuke spoke up. You think the other hidden villages are going to meekly accept when you tell them their genin can never be promoted? The Kage's children are in this room. Good luck with that. Interesting theory. Ibiki smiled down at Sasuke, looking for all the world like he was watching the boy dig his own grave. You willing to bet your future on it? And even if you do stop me from being promoted. Naruto continued. Who cares? I'll keep getting stronger. I'll become so strong the idea of me being a genin is a joke. And then, he pointed his finger at Ibiki. When I'm the first genin to become Hokage, I'm gonna fire you for being such a crappy exam proctor. He means we're staying, added Hinata, her hands now very deliberately laid on her desk. Do your worst, Proctor-sama. Well, one team has more balls than sense. Ibiki chuckled, looking across the room. Anyone else want to leave while they have the chance? Nobody else did. Naruto's talk no jutsu had gotten through to them, it seemed, and they were all resolutely sat at their desks, eyes determined. Very well. Ibiki shrugged. I suppose now's the time to say that everybody's still in this hall. ... Passes. Quote ... What? So what's the final question? The final question, Ibiki explained, was seeing whether or not you were willing to risk continuing in the face of serious consequence. To many of you, death is an ethereal thing, not much a motivating factor sat in an air-conditioned exam room. Expulsion is a much more tangible threat. If you're willing to put your careers on the line to do your duty, you're ready to be chunin. Alternate passing methods include calling our bluff like the Uchiha did, infiltrating my office to find the plans for the exam conveniently sat on my desk, or throwing a tantrum and successfully defeating me and all the other proctors. Sick of all this ninja fake-out bullshit. Sasuke mumbled to himself. So, to all you who have succeeded, Ibiki continued, you get to progress to the second round of the exams, which entails. At which point the window was smashed in. A head of purple hair and an uncomfortably tight mesh suit jumped through the aperture, landing in front of the class in a dramatic pose. My sincerest apologies, kiddies. The woman said. Because passing has just caused you a hell of a lot more problems. She looked up with a wide, vaguely sadistic grin. My name is Mitarashi Anko, proctor of the second stage. And if you thought Ibiki was sadistic, you ain't seen nothing yet. Chapter 15. It's only called The Forest of Death. 10 years earlier. Those two little shits. A younger Morino Ibiki slammed a pair of exam papers onto the table and collapsed into his seat with a sigh. Nobody else in the staff room bothered to ask which two little shits he was referring to. Am I to assume Neji and Itachi passed the written exam? Asked the third Hokage, smiling benignly. Passed. Ibiki growled. They picked it apart. Did you do the one where they were supposed to cheat? Asked one of the other proctors. Oh yeah. But they. Ibiki swallowed. Okay. So they didn't leave their seats for the entire exam. I know they didn't. And no dojutsu use either. But then I collect in the papers at the end of the exam. First of all, both got all 9 questions correct. The Hyuga wrote down on the back all the ways he'd caught the other participants cheating. The ones we didn't catch. And the Uchiha wrote down blackmail material on both me and every other proctor in the exam. There was a pause. Suddenly everyone in the room darted at once towards the 2 papers. Hiruzen flicked his finger from his own seat, and they went up in a burst of flame. Gentlemen, please. Ibiki, do you have any particular comments moving on to the second portion of the exam? Handicap them. The head of T&I demanded. Poison them, forget to give them a scroll, send them in late. For the love of Kami, at least split them apart. Otherwise they might get bored, and then it's very possible nobody else will make it to the third stage. Outside, in the streets, Itachi and Neji were walking home from the exam. So, Itachi began. Bear with me, but I think we were supposed to cheat. Present day. The next morning, all the remaining genin had congregated outside the Forest of Death. Many had been slightly put off by the fact that the Forest of Death was actually its name, but Team 7 had eventually agreed that it was just ninja being melodramatic as usual. It would be deadly, probably, but nothing to be overly concerned about. Pack check. Sasuke called. Week of food rations. Check. Both his teammates echoed him. Medkit. Check. Sleeping bag. Check. Assorted murder tools. Check. Damn right check. Compass. Check. Naruto shuffled through his bag. Funny thing. Here. Hinata fished one out of her own bag. I brought extras just in case. Thanks, Hinata. You'd make a great mom. She choked, putting a hand to her mouth and going red. Yeah, we're basically Naruto's parents. Civilian 12-year-olds can't be worse than him. Sasuke zipped his bag up and shouldered it. At least we've all got food. I'm almost surprised they didn't tell us not to eat or we'll throw up. Still not over that shit. Were you able to get any information on the forest from your family? Hinata asked, recovering. Tried. Sasuke huffed. But I couldn't get a word in edgeways. The night before. He was amazing. Stop. And then he went. Apologized to the librarian for me, in this action hero voice. Stop. And then one of the shadow clones they'd hidden through those kunai and. Stop. Sasuke buried his head in his hands. Itachi, you're embarrassing me. But you were so cool. Itachi gushed. Casting the great fireball with a clone of a clone. Under a transformation technique. I can manage about 8 from full to empty chakra. Sasuke admitted. See, this is the thing. I'm proud of you. No, you're mocking me. Dad, Sasuke did good, didn't he? By your age the great fireball's chakra cost was negligible. Fugaku replied, disinterestedly. He has a lot of progress to make. See, Sasuke exclaimed. Don't listen to him. Itachi replied, with a bit more ardor than a casual dismissal should have warranted. Sasuke has passed the first stage of the exams. Fugaku stated. That is all that matters. And he will pass the second and third with just as much success, if he is a true Uchiha. But we'll be proud of him no matter what, right? Said Makoto, giving her husband a significant glance. Replied Fugaku, noncommittally. Of course we will. Itachi filled in, shooting his younger sibling a smile. Not that I doubt you, of course. Present day. Family. I swear. Sasuke shook his head in despair. Yeah, family. Totally get you. Naruto grumbled. Truly. They cause me much trouble. Agreed Hinata. Okay. That was insensitive. Sasuke admitted, before frowning. What exactly did you two do last night? Sat alone in my flat. Naruto replied. Sat alone in my house. Hinata answered. Sasuke gave them concerned glances. Wait, what do you normally do when I leave? Wait for you to get back. Naruto sighed. Okay. Wow, do you guys want a hug? Feeling prepared, fellow ninja? Said an older genin, with odd gray-blue hair, walking up to them with a smile. We're confident we will survive the forest. Hinata replied, voice polite but eyes wary. The forest, perhaps. But what about the other competitors? Said the newcomer. Name's Kabuto. And I can help you with the latter, if you'd like. You're offering info on the other competitors. Sasuke caught on. Kabuto nodded. I have data cards. One on each of the competing genin. If you like I can show you a few. What's the price? Sasuke asked. Kabuto shrugged. No price. This is free info. That's incredibly suspicious. Sasuke deadpanned. Why would you give us correct information for free? We're in competition. Well, let's look at the info I have on you. Kabuto shuffled through his cards. You've done an A rank already. 2 of you have bloodline limits, and 1 of you doesn't even try to hide the fact that he's the Nine-Tails Fox. Quite frankly, you're a team I'd be glad to have some rapport with. You look older than most of the genin here. Hinata mentioned. How many times have you attempted the exam? 7. She rolled her eyes, which looked a little weird with her blank white orbs. Little fish swimming with the sharks. She declared. What? Naruto looked at her. He's bargaining for our favor so we'll help him win. Sasuke explained. You two extort him as much as you want. No offense but Uchiha honor says I can't associate with him. He turned around as his teammates started quizzing Kabuto about his cards, and immediately jerked backwards, as a face pressed towards his. Lee? He asked. Sasuke. Rock Lee shouted, despite being a matter of centimeters from Sasuke's face. I must defeat you. Quote. More than usual? Sasuke asked. Team 7's daily training with Team 9, Guy put Sasuke into frequent sparring with Lee. The bushy-browed genin treated every fight like a duel for the fate of the earth. Indeed. Lee nodded. I have encountered the most beautiful girl in the world. Really? Sasuke asked. Good for you. Some lady from one of the other hidden villages come to visit. No. Lee shook his head. Haruno Sakura. There was a pause. Sasuke tried not to snort. Sakura. He confirmed. With the pink hair and red dress. Her exactly. Lee confirmed. She is a divine vision of perfection. I mean, she's not bad. Sasuke shrugged. How does that relate to me? You have stolen her heart. Lee leaned back only to point a finger into Sasuke's face. She is infatuated with you. That is true. Sasuke agreed. If I am to claim her love for myself. Lee explained, in his own way. I must defeat you in combat. Sasuke sighed. Lee, I don't think that's how it wo. He stopped to think about it. You want to date Sakura? Yes. Which would, logically, get her to stop bothering me. That makes sense to me. Lee nodded. Lee. Sasuke put a hand on his shoulder. My friend. I wholeheartedly support your endeavor. You do. Lee's eyes went wider than usual. Sasuke nodded. Absolutely. I think you'd be perfect with her. In fact, tell her I said that. I will. Lee shouted. Thank you for your approval, friend Sasuke. But I must still defeat you and Hinata and Sai in the finals as you are all my rivals. Depending on how sucky this next round is, there might not even be 3 rounds. Sasuke mused, but Lee had already gone. He sighed. Alright guinea pigs, I mean, prospective Chunin. Enko's voice carried out over the clearing. Get separated into your teams, we're starting. Chunin helpers came around to each team, discreetly handing them all a scroll, which Naruto snatched and started examining. You will notice that your scroll is either inscribed with the symbol for heaven or the symbol for earth. Enko told the crowd. That's important. You see, in order to pass, you must reach the tower in the center of the forest of death with both a heaven and an earth scroll. And yes, that means you must get the correct one from your competitors. The teams started eyeing each other nervously. Without speaking, Naruto handed the scroll to Sasuke. You can see which scroll everyone has, right? Asked the Uchiha. Get me a pen and paper. Replied the Hyuga. An hour or two later, when all the teams had been arrayed around the circular woods, the call was given to open the floodgates, and more than 3 dozen genin launched into the forest of death. 20 minutes after that, a certain grass ninja had murdered both his teammates, spared a laugh for how unobservant they were, then began hunting. An hour and 10 minutes after that, the 3 Sand siblings had murdered a full team, taken their scroll, and beaten the exam in record-breaking time. 5 or so hours after that, Team 7 stopped to rest. Nobody. Naruto grumbled, helping to set up camp. Nobody to fight. We've been looking all day. Everyone from Konoha knows who we are and what we can do. Sasuke mused. And with Kabuto trading around people's information, even more will be clued in. It's possible people are avoiding us. We have enough of a reputation that people are scared of us. Naruto asked, a smile coming over his face. So that's like actual respect, right? False respect. Sasuke corrected. Us for our names, and you for your, tenant. Actual respect is for who you are, or for what you've done. You get that from Itachi. Yeah, well, I need to take a leak. Naruto walked off into the forest with a wave. Don't go taking out enemy teams without me, okay? Sure. We'll try. For a while there was quiet in the camp. Did you notice that? Sasuke piped up. How happy he looked at the slightest shred of respect. Hinata confirmed. Sasuke sighed. Anyone with any manipulative intent could have him wrapped around their finger in a day. I won't let that happen. Hinata vowed. Sasuke looked at her sidelong. Out of curiosity, do you ever try to hide the fact that you're obsessed with him? She went red. Don't worry about it. Sasuke stretched. Shame. I'll just have to tell my parents marrying you isn't really an option. What? That conversational time bomb was interrupted by Naruto's return. I'm back, guys. He waved. Did I miss anything? Not much. Sasuke stood and walked over to him. You got anything to report? While I was on the toilet. Sorry. Nah. Naruto shrugged. Sasuke smiled at him. There was an odd glint in it. My bad. That wasn't what I meant. Let me rephrase. In a split second he had a hand grabbing Naruto by the lapels, a kunai held to his throat and both Sharingan active. What are your teammates planning? He asked, politely. Naruto gulped, and his transformation technique dispelled. The grass ninja that replaced him, who Sasuke only recognized by headband, didn't look any less terrified. I was meant to surprise attack you, then they would jump down and finish you off. We were then gonna hunt down your other partner together. These will be a squad that don't know all about our visual jutsu then. Hinata casually remarked, getting to her own feet in no hurry. The other two are 100 meters out, in the trees. Drop your new friend and follow me. Roger, Roger. Sasuke agreed. He looked back at his captive and grinned. Sleep. The Sharingan-assisted genjutsu, point blank against an afraid target, met nearly zero resistance. He crumpled in Sasuke's hands. Naruto wandered back into the camp, and his two teammates hardly even looked up. Sorry that took a while. He apologized. I thought it was only a leak, but then it wasn't, and I needed to make a hole and, well, you don't wanna know. We really don't. No. Sasuke shuddered. Naruto stopped when he reached the center, looking down. Guys. Who are they? Sasuke glanced across at the three unconscious, tied-up forms on the clearing floor. Oh. Them. Grass team. They attacked while you were out. Had another heaven scroll though, so we aren't out of the woods yet. Literally. And I would like to mention, we did think about how you would be sad if we didn't include you. Hinata hurried to add. But we only had a few seconds before they realized we'd taken out their first member, so. I'm sorry. It's fine. Naruto waved it off, stomaching his disappointment. But as payment I'm not taking middle watch, I'll do first or last. Last time I had to wake up in the middle of the night then go back to sleep was on the wave mission, and the day after was horrible. Actually. Hinata raised a hand. We may not even have to do that. She straightened to a kneeling position and bit at her own finger, drawing blood. What? Naruto looked at her sudden self-harm with some concern. She pulled a scroll of some sort out of one of her pouches, smeared the drop of blood to it and calmly stated, summoning jutsu. With a poof of smoke, there was suddenly a small animal in the clearing. Hello, mistress. The owl cooed, at a surprisingly high pitch. What do you need? Is that an animal summon? Sasuke leaned in, impressed. Yes, said the owl. I am Kudos of the Owl Clan. You are the mistress teammates. It is a pleasure to meet you all. The way it emphasized the ku in Kudos, Naruto knew that name had to have been deliberate. It was about the same size as a regular owl, but was not a normal color. Its plumage was assorted shades of navy blue. Summoning technique. Naruto had never heard of it before. It lets you have a pet. Not a pet. Hinata explained, as Kudos looked offended at the thought. It lets you summon spirit creatures from whatever animal you have a summoning contract with. They may look real, but they're actually made entirely out of natural energy. The owls have been the signature family of the Hyuga clan for generations, something about the big eyes and 360 vision must have seemed like a resemblance. The Uchiha don't have anything like that, but Itachi does have a thing for crows. Sasuke added. He eyed the bird critically. She doesn't look much like a combat summon. Kudos replied, indignantly. And no. My primary use is reconnaissance, patrolling and guarding. That's why you're here. Hinata addressed it directly. Kudos, can you watch over us while we sleep? If anyone comes, or the people who are tied up wake up, give out a really loud screech, okay? Absolutely. Kudos responded. He stretched out an impressive wingspan for his size, and with a few beats climbed into the air, finding a perch up in the trees above them. Regular owls can see and hear things hundreds of meters away. Hinata explained. Summoned ones are even better. We'll be safe without taking watch. That's awesome, Hinata. Naruto exclaimed with his usual zeal. You're the best. I'm almost tempted to join the Hyuga clan just to get this summoning thing. The implications of that sent Hinata into another blushing and coughing fit. There are other animals, Naruto. Sasuke sighed. And as impressive as the technique is, couldn't Naruto just make a few shadow clones and have them take watch all night? Hinata blinked. Kudos cooed above them. Right. We should probably do that too. I love you guys but sometimes I want to kill you both. Good night. Rolling his eyes, Sasuke crawled into his sleeping role. Chapter 16. Akatsuki's favorite fighting snake man. Days before, Hinata rolled the summoning contract out on her floor, and put a kunai to her finger. She smeared blood across the scroll, then put both hands to the paper, and channeled as much chakra as she could into it. Summoning jutsu. With a poof of smoke, A tawny owl almost as tall as her appeared on top of the contract. It was facing away, but its head made a full half turn to meet her eyes. "And woo?" it asked, in an old voice. "Are you Hinata Hyuga?" she said, giving it a low bow. She knew full well that, with the amount of chakra she'd used to summon it, it might be able to do her serious bodily harm if she offended it. "A Hyuga, It didn't break eye contact. "Well, I can see that much. But you have not been officially sworn onto this contract, have you? Little girls should not go playing with scrolls that are not theirs." It turned its head away. "Wait," she cried. "I'm sorry, Owl-sama, but there isn't anybody to sign me in." Its head spun back around to her. "There is no need for sirs and samas with me, young madam." "Explain what you mean." "Nobody can introduce me to the contract because there is nobody alive to do so." Hinata explained. "My family. The Hyuga have all been killed." "I see." It clicked its beak. "It is as we feared. I apologize for my rudeness, Lady Hyuga. If I may, I would like to take you somewhere. My superiors would like to know what you know." "Where are we going?" she asked, wondering how to explain to her team if she went on a long trek. "You will not have to leave this room, Miss Hinata. Reverse summoning one summoner is usually only done once extreme trust has been placed in them, but on this occasion an exception must be made. Hold on to my wings." Hesitantly, Hinata did as she was asked, burying her hands in the owl's plumage. It made a sound that might have been a cough. "I need to be airborne to use jutsu. Excuse me." It flapped its wings once, and put its claws together. Then there was light. Hinata went from the closed curtains of her room to blinding sunlight in a split second, and the surprise was enough to make her let go of the owl in shock. That was a mistake, as she was in the air at the time. She began plummeting. She screamed as her stomach went upwards into her throat and she fell, wind whipping at her clothes as her arms and legs pinwheeled. After a few seconds her inner ninja took over, and she straightened out her limbs to maximize her surface area, putting on her Byakugan to better see where on Earth she was. Turns out the answer may not have been on Earth at all. She was so far above the ground she couldn't see it, which was bad, and even more confusingly there were giant rocks floating in the air. She angled for a landing on one of the closer planetoids she could see, only to feel herself slow as the owl grabbed the back of her coat and brought her to a stop. "Are all Hyuga so heavy?" it grumbled, flapping heavily. "Where are we?" Hinata shouted. "Past the wind. The Angel Mountains," it replied. "A place you will never find again. Now stop struggling, or I'll loose my grip." Eventually it dropped her off on one of the floating rocks, before diving off the side and leaving her to take in her surroundings. Now that she was alone, Hinata could see dozens of birds flying around the mountains. The rocks themselves seemed like self-contained biomes. Some, like hers, were grassy, some had lakes or waterfalls. Others were forested on all sides, with trees growing downwards to the ground far below. It was peaceful, beautiful, and she could feel something tickling her skin. It felt almost like the chakra signatures she could pick up from powerful ninja, but her Byakugan couldn't detect anything. "Natural energy." A voice boomed from behind her. "It is invisible to your eyes. The greatest weakness of your clan is that you fear to blind yourselves, and thus there are many things you do not see." Hinata turned around and jumped out of her skin. Facing her were a pair of eyes, each almost as big as her. Their gaze pierced her, and it felt like it could see everything she was and ever had been. Its plumage was a shimmering navy blue. And the eyes, well, there was no other way to say it. They looked like Byakugan. "My dojutsu can't see you," was all she could think to say. The giant owl leaned backwards. It was stood on a much larger rock at lower elevation. With a better look, it seemed oddly anthropomorphic, humanoid. A bow taller than the Hokage tower was slung over its back, and a scar cut across its beak. "We are not flesh and blood, like you are," it explained. "We are made entirely of senjutsu chakra, and invisible to most dojutsu. Our ability to spot each other sage creatures is, I believe, one of the main reasons the Hyuga bonded with us." It inclined its head in what might have been a bow. "I am Athena, matriarch of the owls." Hinata went into a full kowtow. "Hinata Hyuga. It is an honor." Athena replied. "You would be Hiyashi's daughter then." "I never met the man. He rarely summoned my brood, but I have learned much of you from my brother. Your brother? Hinata asked. Athena pointed with one wing. In the distance, squinting with her regular eyes, Hinata could see another owl that must have been at least as large as the one she was talking to. Its head turned to look at her, but quickly turned back away. Icarus. He and his immediate family serve your half-brother, Neji. He spoke of you often. Hinata clenched her fists. She began stalking towards the distant figure on reflex before Athena put a wing up in her way. Peace. You would never reach him anyway. He flies faster than I can. Neji is branch family. He isn't supposed to have owl summons. She grit her teeth. I suspect Neji does a great many things he is not supposed to do. Athena replied, wryly. Now please, explain. What has befallen your family? Why have none but your half-brother summoned us in 5 years? Hinata took in a deep breath to calm herself. Then she explained what Neji had done. It took a few minutes, and partway through Athena had turned to look at Icarus in the distance. I see, she said, when Hinata had finished. And what do you intend to do? Kill him. That may be unwise. How? She asked, arms spread. He killed my family. Do you know why? Athena pressed. What reason would there be? People always have a reason for their actions. If there is no reason, then it is madness. Then he must be mad. Hinata concluded. Athena shook her head. My brother would not betray us all for a madman. But he will not explain why he follows Neji. When I pressed him, he gave me this. She brought a wing up to her scarred beak. We owls are not perfect. But we do try to be wise. If Icarus comes to Neji's aid, it is because he agrees with what he did. Do you? Hinata challenged. As I said. Athena replied. We are not perfect. Knowing what you know, I cannot discern what might make Neji's actions right. If I conclude they were wrong, then I will go and beat some sense into my brother. But not before I understand fully. So what do you want then? Hinata tried not to sulk. I will allow you to sign the summoning contract with my family. Decided Athena. Properly. On the condition that, when you find Neji, you make him explain his reasons. If you believe after you understand his motive that he still deserves death, then make it so. But not before. Hinata thought about it. Athena had a point. She wanted justice, as much as vengeance. And she could not make that ruling on false information. I agree. Present day. Look out. There's a spider. I see it. Don't worry. It's not a big deal. Got it, mistress. Kudos had decided to keep following them the next day, because apparently their adventure through the woods was way more interesting than flying around the mountains all day. Single quote. They were hours into the new day, after leaving the grass ninja tied up in their old camp, but had yet to see anyone. That had not stopped Kudos. Naruto's shadow clones had had to explain to him that he didn't have to wake up Team 7 every time he spotted a scorpion on a tree 100 meters away. Now they were awake, however, he saw no reason not to warn them about everything he noticed. I spy a hostile genin. Hinata called out, bringing the four to a stop. Her Byakugan range was greater than Kudos. Woo baby, here we go. Naruto grinned. Hidden grass. 300 meters ahead, and closing. Hinata continued. I can't see his teammates, so he might be alone or it might be a trap. Is he heaven or earth? Sasuke asked. That team was earth. Hinata replied, victoriously. Yes. Let's sick him. We can get to the center days before the deadline at this rate. Naruto started stretching his arms in preparation. Patience, Naruto. Sasuke cautioned. God, I sound old. Any fight we get into that's fair is a fight where we're taking unnecessary risks. I vote we send a clone of you in alone first to make him think. Snake. Shouted Kudos. 100 meters, getting closer fast. Kudos. Naruto sighed. Please, stop warning us about the natural wildlife. Wait. Hinata held a hand up. Snake. I can't see a snake. No. Big snake. Kudos was actually panicking. Very big snake. Soon Team 7 didn't need bad vision. They could hear the cracking sound of trunks snapping like matchsticks. What the oh no? Hinata blanched. Sage creature. Move. The trio scattered as the trees in front of them parted and an absolutely massive snake crashed into their position, opening wide its jaws and snapping up Kudos in one mouthful. Sweet merciful Kami, what the fuck? Sasuke landed nearby and flung a brace of kunai. They scattered off the monster's scales. Did Kudos just die? Naruto asked as the snake turned its eyes on him. They desummon when they take too much damage. He'll be traumatized but fine. Hinata explained. The snake lunged at them again. They separated, jumping off in different directions, but it swung its tail and caught Naruto in midair, slamming him into a nearby tree which he magnetized to with his feet. Water walking training hadn't been for nothing. So all we need to do is damage it. Enough to kill it. Yes. She replied, as Sasuke launched a fireball at the beast. But that's a lot of damage. No genin should be able to summon anything this big. If you're such an expert, Sasuke called to her, watching the snake shake off his fireball without much effort. Then what do we do? Run. Hinata told them. Definitely run. Oh, I wouldn't do that. Came a perfectly calm, silky smooth voice. Even if it isn't faster than you, I certainly am. They looked up. A genin was stood on a branch, far above them. The snake moved back to curl up beneath him, eyeing its prey. Is it me or does it look hungry? Naruto stage whispered. The ninja or the snake? Sasuke returned. Yes. Who are you? Hinata called out to him, analyzing his chakra network. It was much more developed than any genins should be. An interested party. The man replied, with a smile. I'm looking for someone willing to betray everyone they love for power. Any takers? You really need to work on your sales pitch, buddy. Sasuke replied, activating his Sharingan. Alas, I admit, my people's skills do need some work. Sighed the man. Most of the people who work for me are already crazy, so they're a lot easier to deal with. But if words won't move you. His tongue snaked out to lick his lips, then extended far longer than it should have been able to. Then I'll just have to give you a taste. He looked left and downwards. No, that doesn't work, I'm the one doing the tasting. Sorry, I'm only so good at the whole one-liners thing, that was always Jiraiya's you know what, I'm going to bite you, that's what's going on, okay. He gestured, and the snake darted towards them again. Somehow, Naruto had ended up fighting Big Toothy. If he thought about it, his teammates had probably organized that deliberately because they both had nothing to deal with the monster. Good luck using rotation on something bigger than a house, but he didn't have time to think about it right now because a giant snake was trying to eat him. Multi-shadow clone jutsu. He called, summoning 100 or 200 more of himself, and all of him launched at the snake. Their combined momentum was actually enough to force it back, but rather than injuring it that just sent it into a writhing mess that squashed a good lot of the clones before they hit the floor. Those that survived clung to it tenaciously, trying to pry knives and shuriken between its scales. The eyes. He heard Sasuke's voice call out. Immediately, some of his clones jumped for Big Toothy's face and started stabbing. The snake was clearly an experienced summon. It responded to the threat of ninja on its nose by, quite sensibly, grinding the top of its face into the dirt and dispelling or shaking off all the attackers. From his left, he heard what had to be Hinata screaming. Naruto grimaced. He could feel the Kyuubi stirring inside his abdomen but he tried to suppress it, fearing what would happen to his allies if he let it loose. He needed a better way. Time to start using that A-rank pay then. He summoned another 2 shadow clones and reached into one of the larger pouches in his jacket. This was where he kept his explosive tags. Instead of tearing one off the strip, he unrolled the whole thing. If this doesn't work, the clones grabbed the roll by either end and charged forwards. Big Toothy was squashing all the other Naruto on it, however, and saw the attackers coming. With its tail, it flicked both out of the air, dispelling them. The explosive toilet roll, trademark, fluttered to the floor behind the snake, which began to slither rapidly towards Naruto's location, hissing angrily. Naruto considered using another barrage of shadow clones to push it back, but decided he needed a bit more concussive force. He put his hands together. Multi-shadow clone jutsu. Then all of his duplicates ran through the only complicated set of hand seals he'd memorized. Buffeting wind jutsu. The maximum chakra Naruto could put into the C-rank jutsu, times about 50, erupted a miniature hurricane in the forest. Smaller trees were uprooted, full-size ones buckled and cracked. Big Toothy was thrown, writhing, backwards along its path, falling in a heap on top of the explosive toilet roll. Naruto staggered backwards on his tree trunk, gasping. So this is what chakra exhaustion feels like. Grimacing, he dispelled all of his remaining clones to recover the remnants of their chakra, and put his hands into the remote activation sign. 50 explosive tags detonated right under Big Toothy with a massive boom. A cloud of smoke obscured Naruto's vision and he didn't have the chakra to clear it, collapsing backwards against the tree trunk taking in ragged breaths. He could still hear sounds of fighting and he looked sideways, trying to catch a glimpse of his teammates. That's when Big Toothy erupted from the smoke in front of him. Bruised, with a bloodied patch of missing scales, it was nonetheless both alive and angry, and it was charging full speed at him. He tried to jump away but his chakra control was shot, and all he managed was to limply throw himself off his branch and began falling. The snake, despite his best efforts, still had perfectly functional eyes. Its head lunged out, and its jaws closed around him with a snap. About a minute earlier, Sasuke and Hinata charged. Their target raised his eyebrow. Sasuke went in left, flinging one kunai at his head and swinging another to his knee. Hinata went right. She made a Juken strike towards his chest. And then something happened, and they were both flung backwards. Try harder. The man incentivized. Hickey prizes only go to genin who put the effort in. Bonus victory. Abandonment of teammates for rage or personal gain. The pair glared at him, and ran back in. The following fight was epic, dramatic, and incredibly well choreographed, if the author had been bothered to describe it. Sasuke wasn't ashamed to admit that Hinata was the greatest at taijutsu in their whole graduating class, not counting what Rock Lee could do when he started opening gates. Sasuke had seen that once, and wasn't looking forward to taking it on in the exams. Sasuke himself, thanks to rigorous training with the aforementioned two and also goddamn Itachi, was no slouch either. But this ninja was keeping up with them easily. He moved just fast enough to block or dodge everything they threw at him, and no faster, occasionally throwing out non-lethal strikes of his own to check if they were paying attention. This terrified Sasuke, because in the moments he had to think, he was amazed by his own performance. He had spent hours being taught, on principle, how the Sharingan performed against the Byakugan, but nobody had thought to inform him how well they worked together. Communication was unnecessary. She could see everything he did, and could act on his second-to-second plans without any prompting. On his end, time spent watching her fight with the Sharingan let him perfectly set up situations where she would be best suited to attack. It was this nigh impeccable teamwork that made it possible to tag the hostile ninja. The end of some razor wire, passed from Hinata to Sasuke during a period of swapping hands with their opponent, was wrapped around the hilt of his kunai and thrown. The ninja dodged left. Then Hinata threw the knife on her end to his left. The ninja grabbed and caught the wire before it reached him, but he didn't have a blade like Kakashi had, and as the kunai looped round to each other he was practically immobilized. By the time he had repelled Hinata's further palm strikes and brought both hands up to snap the wire, Sasuke had already completed the hand seals for the Great Fireball. The grass man was bathed in fire. Do you know any other attack jutsu? Hinata grumbled, moving back to his position. Do you know any attack jutsu at all? He shot back, then shouted to his left, the eyes. As a hint to Naruto. The fire blew out, and the sight it left behind was horrific. The man's skin had been charred and blistered, his clothes in tatters. And then he sighed. Good, I'll give you that. He admitted. But troublesome. Shikamaru? Sasuke asked on impulse. Nope, said the man. He brought a finger with a worryingly sharp nail to his skin, then, to the disgust of the genin watching, tore the top layer of his skin off. The completely unharmed form underneath had skin pale as snow, long black hair, and golden eyes with slitted irises. Oh no, mumbled Sasuke. Oh yes, hissed Orochimaru. Fuck. Fuck 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 fuck. We need to get out of here now. Maybe we can distract him with shadow clones long enough to get Naruto and get the fuck out. Hinata's gotta be on the same page, anyone with a modicum of sensible threat assessment would. Oh no. His Sharingan tracked Hinata, in full, avenge my clan mode, sprinting straight at the S-class missing nin at top speed. By the time he started moving to back her up, she was already in front of Orochimaru. 8 trigrams. She shouted. 64 p. Orochimaru grabbed her by the throat and lifted her up. Shout the technique name during the technique. He tutted. Your cousin managed that much at least. Hinata's eyes widened. Orochimaru grinned. Oh yes, I've had more than my fair share of encounters with Neji. Lovely boy. Pretty eyes. Oh, and that was the abandonment of teammates' claws. Ding ding. He sunk his teeth into her neck. She let out an ear-piercing scream. Sasuke was there in a second, but Orochimaru was apparently already finished, throwing her limp form at him to catch. He did so, jumping immediately back out of range, he hoped, and setting her down. That was when he looked to check how Naruto was doing, just in time to watch him get eaten by a giant snake. Naruto! He shouted, voice hoarse, but it only served to attract the attention of the snake, which turned its head to him with a smug fucking expression on its face. Watching his blonde best friend die again, with his other teammate in God knows what condition by his feet, was enough to make Sasuke snap. A second Tomo came to life in his eyes. He blasted towards Orochimaru, witnessing everything in greater detail, seeing everything at a faster rate, curling up his fist with a wordless cry of rage. He maintained a merciless barrage for 6 seconds straight before Orochimaru's neck stretched out, wrapping around Sasuke's body and freezing him in place. Well, chuckled the snake Sanin's head from behind Sasuke's shoulder. I only wanted one, but with a development like that how can I resist? Reckless abandonment of your teammates, Sasuke. Ding ding. He bit into the genin. The pain Sasuke felt was indescribable. It was like the man's fangs were injecting lava into his veins that spread across more of his body with every passing second. He howled into the trees. Even from within Big Toothy's mouth, Naruto heard that shout. Now both his teammates were, at the very least, in incredible pain. Fine. He told the ball of hatred in his stomach. Do your worst. And the rage exploded. He put his arms to the top of the snake's mouth and heaved, forcing its jaw open. Snarling, he jumped out the exit provided, grabbing the tip of the snake's nose, demanding the Kyuubi to give him even more strength, more. The Kyuubi provided. Red aura burning around him, he lifted the entire mass of the monster and flung it over his head, making it slam on its back on top of a cracked tree trunk, impaling it and probably breaking its spine in multiple places. It desummoned. Naruto smelled Sasuke before he saw him and was upon his location in moments, launching a wave of killing intent at his adversary. Orochimaru met that wave, and smiled. Well, hello you. He unwrapped himself from Sasuke. I hope you don't mind me doing my thing with your friend here. Unless, wait, were you two a couple, maybe? I'm going to tear you to fucking pieces. Naruto growled. I'm going to take that as a yes. Orochimaru hurled Sasuke to the floor some distance away. Naruto, desperately trying to quell the primal rage he was feeling, briefly considered launching himself at the snake Sanin, but he eventually settled for darting across to Sasuke's unconscious form, standing over it protectively and baring his teeth. So the Kyuubi has more self-control than his two teammates, will wonders never cease. Orochimaru chuckled. How cute. Well then, I'll be off. You three take care. Naruto blinked, and Orochimaru was gone. Taking a few deep breaths, he quelled the red chakra flowing through his system. He nearly passed out from his troubles. The Kyuubi had been almost single-handedly fueling his body. But through considerable force of will, he was able to crouch down next to his partner without collapsing. Sasuke, are you okay? The obviously suffering Uchiha cracked open an eye. Naruto. Is he? He's gone. Naruto breathed. Are you? Do you? He could hardly ask. Are you okay? You. Suplexed. 100-meter snake. Came Sasuke's response. He hacked and coughed, and Naruto realized he was laughing. You. You absolute fucking madman. Hey. His eye closed and he slumped. Naruto checked his pulse, but he was definitely alive. The way he shook, tossed and turned was a bit of a giveaway. Naruto grimaced and stood. He knew damn well they wouldn't let him hear the end of it if he forfeit. So, he had to pass the exam. With his two unconscious and suffering and potentially all sorts of messed up teammates. While he only had one of the required scrolls. When he couldn't even afford to make a single shadow clone without knocking himself out. Backbone of the team, Naruto. Come on. Sighing, he reached down and pulled Sasuke over one shoulder, winced, and went looking for Hinata. Chapter 17. Sound, it hurts. Pain. That was what woke her up. It was a constant, throbbing agony that occasionally spiked and pulled her out of the unconscious. Usually she just shuffled and fell back into her slumber, but this time she refused, trying to get an arm under her and open her eyes. That hurt, but everything else already hurt, so she ignored it. Hinata, came a voice. It was a lovely voice. She looked up and spotted a flash of yellow. Naruto. She breathed, relieved. Crap, hold on. Naruto shuffled around, then held something out to her. Drink. She acquiesced, because it was Naruto. Whatever it was tasted like ash, but she gulped down as much as she could, coughing up a little at the end. How? How long? She gasped. About 3 days. Naruto replied, tentatively. It's the middle of the night. Sasuke's been up twice. This is your first time. We're in a cave somewhere in the forest, and the exams are still on. Here, eat. She complied. It's cold. She mumbled around whatever he had just fed her. Couldn't risk a fire. He apologized. Tomorrow. Maybe, but I've spent the last day recovering from the fight. I couldn't get into a 3vs1. Well, that was problematic. Hinata tried to think, and came up with a very elegant solution. She crawled over and collapsed on his lap. Warm. She explained, snuggling closer. The pain eased, just a little bit. Naruto sighed. Great. You're crazy too. Sasuke started mumbling about an alternate world where his brother turned evil and left the village, then he confused me with his brother and tried to kill me. But he still pretty much couldn't move, swore vengeance, it was awkward. Hinata tried to run that through her head. You don't like me being here. No, you do you. He replied, shifting underneath her. You hate me. She started crying. No, I don't, you're great. You should. She sniffed. I betrayed you. In the same was as Itachi joined some terrorists. Naruto laughed. Sure. She loved his laugh. No. She shook her head, which had the side effect of wiping her face all over his shirt. In the written exam. I was going to ruin it all. You were? He asked. She nodded. I was going to forfeit the exam. Oh yeah. Naruto still didn't sound convinced. Why was that? I thought you were going to fail the last question and get banned from becoming Chunin. She explained. Now he thought she was a horrible traitor who was horrible, so she may as well tell him everything. I was going to forfeit to keep us all back a year. I was going to betray you all. But you didn't. But I thought it. Hinata. Naruto sighed. Tentatively, he put a hand on her head. It's okay. In the end you didn't stop us, and even if you did, it was because you cared about us, right? I guess. Hinata mumbled. Had she been fully awake she would have been freaking out right now, but as was she just thought Naruto made a very comfortable pillow. Then there's nothing to worry about. I forgive you, and Sasuke will too. He absently started stroking her hair. Hinata purred, which made him pause for a moment before continuing. I'm also sorry I went and attacked the snake man and got Sasuke hurt. She felt like adding, to make the slate clean. That's a little worse. No. But it's okay. He reassured quickly. Just don't do it again, okay? Okay. She nodded. Comfortable, she promptly fell back to sleep. Once again, Naruto smelled the attack coming before he saw it. He was pretty sure this was another sign of the demon fox trying to take over and kill everyone he loved, but this once he was thankful for it. He slowly shifted Hinata off himself and stood, stretching his arms and cracking his neck. When the 3 genin dressed in black and gray dropped down outside the cave mouth, Naruto was stood there in front of them. If he'd had a mirror, he would have noticed that his eyes were red, and his whiskers a little more pronounced than usual. You're the team from Hidden Sound, right? He greeted, keeping his voice cordial. Uzumaki Naruto. How's your day? Dosu. Greeted the lead ninja. And pretty good, pretty good. Just come across some easy prey, so mood seems to be on the up and up. Fair enough. Naruto shrugged. He gestured into the cave behind him, pointing at one of the satchels. You're an Earth team, right? We have a Heaven Scroll. We aren't in much shape to fight. They had 2, actually, theirs and the one from the grass team that had tried to ambush them. He'd give both away if he had to, but he didn't plan to give up on passing just yet. What's to stop us from just taking it and eliminating you as a threat? Tested one of them, a girl. Naruto laughed easily. Wow, acting on point today. Do we look in much position to cause a threat? Well, maybe I have 20 shadow clones hidden in the forest. Who knows? You don't have the chakra to summon 20 shadow clones. Laughed the other boy in the group. The point is, Naruto continued, either you can take the heaven scroll, beat the exam in another hour and go take a nap, or you try to beat up me, probably succeed, but risk getting one or more of your members injured in the process. And I should probably warn you there's an S-class missing nin wandering around the forest. We know. And what? We know. Dosu shrugged. Orochimaru. He's our boss. Naruto paled and the sound ninja laughed. I'll admit, if I'd been after your scroll you would have convinced me. But I'm here for your two teammates. The fox stirred again. Well, you can tell your boss, Naruto grit his teeth, that they both refuse his invitation. Oh, I'm not bringing them to him. Dosu waved his hand dismissively. You think we want our master to have some new favorite pets? It's bad enough with Kimimaro and the Sound 4. No, we're going to kill them both. This has been a roller coaster of a conversation, but still no. Naruto summarized. All right then. Dosu shrugged. I was going to offer you a chance to ditch them both and live, actually. Those who fail their missions are scum. Naruto quoted. But those who abandon their teammates are worse than scum. Have it your way. Dosu replied. Zaku. Sick him. The other male pointed his arms, but Naruto was already moving. A direct, visible threat for the three to focus on, that's what he was. Perfect for distracting them from the 20 shadow clones, which were about the most he could create at the moment, that were really there, and bombarded the trio with kunai. The sound trio vanished before he could reach them, and in the split second it took him to realize what vanished entailed, he already began to get the memories of shadow clones popping. Then there was a boom from the trees and a sonic blast ripped towards him, catching him in the stomach and launching him back towards the cave. Zaku walked out. You used clones to spring my trap. Naruto muttered. We're sound ninja. Your clones aren't that quiet. And I'll be killing you while my team is killing them. Laughed Zaku. He pointed his wrists at Naruto again. See these. These gauntlets fire compressed sound waves of pure concussive force. Why would you explain what they do? Naruto asked, confused. For drama, of course. Zaku explained. He fired. Naruto ran forwards, got caught up in the blast, and thrown backwards again, but by then he had completed his hand seals. The substitution technique swapped him with a kunai behind Zaku, and he turned and punched him in the back. Zaku went sprawling. He went running after him, ready to slam his head into the floor and put him out of the fight, but another gray ninja appeared in front of him. Not so fast, sneered the girl. The following taijutsu spar was fast-paced and vicious, Naruto foregoing his usual morals and her having none in the first place. She was agile, launching quick jabs and sweeps, but Naruto was used to fighting Hinata. Finally engaging a speed type who wouldn't disable him with a single hit, he took one punch to the shoulder in order to get his arms around her and squeeze, making her cry out in pain, then tackle her to the floor. He punched at her face, but Zaku fired a sonic blast from the floor, hurling him off his injured teammate. Annoyed, Naruto put his hands together and summoned a new cohort of shadow clones, one of which grabbed his arm and flung him back at the girl. Dosu intercepted him, catching his flying kick on an arm brace and knocking him back. How many can he make? The girl asked. As many as he needs. Dosu growled. He gets the chakra back every time we dispel them. Zaku. Get up. Kin. Stop time wasting. He pointed his bracer. My turn. A high-pitched screech shot out of it. Naruto fell to the ground in pain, ears actually bleeding. The Kyuubi chakra bleeding out to improve his animal senses made this attack even more debilitating than usual, and he was practically defenseless as Kin ran towards him. She did not expect to be clotheslined. Naruto's shadow clones gangpiled her, brutally kicking and punching only to be disintegrated by Zaku's arm cannons. The fuck is this? Why aren't the clones in pain? He fired in arcs, disintegrating them all, but not before three had jumped Dosu, bludgeoning his metal gauntlets with reckless abandon that would make any real person's knuckles bleed. Who cares about pain? One shouted. We do our job. Yelled another. Dosu's gauntlets buckled, and the noise stopped. Naruto shook his head, grinned, and attempted to make the shadow clone hand seal, but had to dart away from a kunai thrown by a bleeding and bruised Kin. She didn't have the time to throw a second, and his fingers formed the seals. The bell on her first kunai jingled. His new group attacked, and the battlefield became a chaotic mess of fist fighting. Naruto realized something was wrong when he smacked Dosu full in the face, only for him to poof into smoke. Then Naruto received the memories of Dosu punching him in the face. He put it together. Genjutsu. He cursed. Now he was clearly clued in, his opposition cut the subtlety. His vision became distorted and strangely colored, the terrain lurching beneath his feet. He then began getting the memories of shadow clones attacking each other, all mistaking each other for their mutual opponents. That confusing mess sent him to his knees, hands cradling his head as he growled to himself. Ah, looks like this one works on the shadow clones. Laughed one of the Zaku. Kakashi had drilled them on Genjutsu. Naturally Naruto's poor chakra control made him useless at it, but Kakashi had taught him the defenses. You had two options: identify and pick apart the opponent's illusion with your own skills, nope, or perform a basic dispelling technique, more like it, that removed outside influences through a brute force chakra overload of your own systems. Not that he could be sure that would work, and there was no way to know how they had cast the technique or if they could just do it again. The red chakra rose, uncoiling itself within Naruto's belly, and he viciously clamped down on it, trying to keep a clear head. His friends were in danger, damn it. Save Sasuke. Save Hinata. Save Sasuke. Save Hinata. Repeating the phrase like a mantra brought a degree of order back to his thoughts, even as his last few clones were executed. With that clarity came his answer. Sound-based ninja. The bells. Closing his eyes and shutting out his ears, Naruto rose to his feet and performed the shadow clone technique. A kunai took him in the shoulder, likely in an attempt to disrupt him. He ignored it. 3 clones appeared around him, and as one, he and they moved to face 4 different directions. Buffeting wind jutsu. The gust blasted through the forest. One of the 4 managed to hit the bell and it began ringing loudly, disrupting the genjutsu somewhat and revealing its location. One clone substituted with it, and another grabbed it and crushed it in its fingers. The illusion stopped altogether. Naruto opened his eyes and looked back at the sound trio, who looked like they were quickly reappraising their threat assessment of him. So, did you set up more traps while I was disabled, or did you keep wasting your time? He asked. Wanna come find out? Kin taunted. Naruto bared his teeth. He sent in his shadow clones first, and it turned out Team Dosu had set up a few razor traps while hiding from his wind attack. They took out a few clones, and the rest continued on, undeterred. After that, it was only a matter of time. Even in his diminished state, he had more chakra than any one of the trio. They knew all his tricks, as he knew all of theirs, but they didn't have an adequate counter to his. Dosu's gauntlets were busted and the clones were careful not to let any of Kin's kunai go unintercepted. Zaku's sound blasts were still effective, but shadow clones could just be replaced, and Naruto himself just grew more angry every time he was caught by it. Team Dosu hadn't realized they were one-trick ponies until that moment, and now they were caught in a taijutsu brawl against an unlimited number of opponents. Dosu himself saw which way the winds were blowing, and when he saw something from within Naruto's cave he seemed to decide that he had had enough. Zaku. Breathing room. He yelled, and did something with his gauntlet. The damaged machine exploded, letting out a screech of even greater intensity than before that elicited a similar howl from Naruto. Zaku fired his gauntlets in an arc and cleared out most of the clones, and while the few remaining stopped their assault to make more, the trio jumped backwards and fled into the trees. That was when Naruto took the time to yank the kunai out of his shoulder. It bled. He ignored it. He wanted to chase after them but he remembered there was some reason he was supposed to stay in the cave. Oh right, his teammates. There they were though, on their feet and ready to go. Both Sasuke and Hinata had strange black markings spreading from their necks out across their bodies. Both had dojutsu active. Who? Sasuke asked, tone flat. The sound team. Naruto shot back. Orochimaru's guys. Then let's go get them. Hinata proposed, stretching her arms out and looking into the middle distance. Naruto made a feral smile. A pack of animals ran through the forest. At their head, a demon fox, the other 2 no less dangerous and no less ferocious. One's eyes could see their prey through the trees, one's nose could smell them from anywhere in the forest. Team Dosu never stood a chance. Naruto hit Zaku in the back with a double kick that sent him flying into a nearby tree, while Sasuke came up on his left and caught Dosu by the ankle, promptly throwing him through a branch with enough force to snap it in two. That is, snap the ankle, then the branch. Hinata appeared in front of Kin and struck her with the 64 palms before she could even make a fighting stance. The girl fell, limp, to the forest floor. Zaku hit the ground next to her not much later, and Sasuke carried his prey down by the throat, walking Dosu slowly towards his teammates before throwing him limply at them. That's everyone, Sasuke said, breezily. What do you want to do? I could fireball all three no problem, but if you have one in particular you want to gut, you go right ahead. Naruto considered it, then frowned. There was something wrong with this. He tried to figure out what was bothering him. It wasn't the teamwork, he always liked teamwork. Had he made any tactical errors? Not that he had noticed. Did he have a problem with killing them for some reason? Oh. When, exactly, did I lose control of the Kyuubi chakra? He could almost hear the fox laughing darkly as the red light fled his eyes and his body stopped blocking out all the pain he was in. The Earth Scroll, he told Dosu, trying not to let his pain show. Maybe it was the two cursed ninja flanking him, but they didn't spot it. Give us the scroll, then get out of here. I knew we forgot something. Sasuke sighed. Dosu nodded silently, one visible eye very wide, as he fished out a black scroll and tossed it forwards. Naruto caught it, as Dosu and a very injured Zaku picked up the paralyzed Kin and ran again. You want to chase them down again? Hinata moaned at his side. It's getting boring. Hinata. He walked up to her, desperately. You're not yourself. I'm fine. She waved a hand dismissively. She was not fine. The symbol on her neck was pulsing red, and the black markings on her skin were shifting angrily. Hinata. We don't kill people. We don't. Hinata. Damn it, remember this morning. Last night. Naruto tried to think of what would snap her out of it. We were talking and you were, well, pretty much drunk and then you climbed on top of me and. Hinata's eyes widened. The curse mark warred with a much greater force, her own embarrassment, and was defeated, the black marks glowing red and receding back within the original spiral on her neck. That was, she stammered. We were just. Wah. She fell unconscious on the floor. Naruto turned to Sasuke, similarly afflicted, who seemed to be dealing with his problems on his own. Now the battle was over and his bloodlust was quieting down, his own markings were disappearing from his skin. Naruto. What the fuck just happened? You got a hickey from a snake dude and turned evil for a moment. Don't pass out, I am not carrying you both again. Naruto caught Sasuke as he fell, but the latter waved a hand dismissively and was able to get to his feet. I'm fine. Fuck, I'm not fine. OWW, that hurts. He grimaced. Does this thing only stop hurting when I turn evil? Because that's some solid motivation right there. Naruto started massaging his temples. Damn it, Kakashi said this would be less stressful than the deadly Mist Jonin. Can you help carry? I'll be lucky if I don't need carrying. Sasuke grumbled. He eyed Hinata suspiciously. She enjoyed that violence way too much. You weren't very saintly either. Naruto cautioned. Alright, shadow clones it is then. Hey, smile. Why? We got the Earth Scroll. Naruto waved it in the air. Unless someone else attacks us with murderous intent, I think we just passed round 2. Sasuke sniffed at that and looked at the sky. Well, we're still pretty far out from the center. And we've only got, what, 2 hours? I thought we had another day. Midday on the 5th day, Naruto. We have 2 hours. Naruto blanched. Right. 2 hours, shadow clones, go. Go. Chapter 18. This system makes no sense. Congratulations, Naruto. I knew you could. Holy hell, what happened to you? Do we pass or not? Growled Naruto, throwing the 2 scrolls to the ground in disgust. Because if the answer is not, then the Uchiha clan just might be launching a coup sometime in the future. Sasuke grouched. And if murdering that snake whore Anko is an optional victory condition, we would love to take it. Hinata grumbled. Yumino Iruka looked at the genin trio in mute horror. Naruto's clothing was torn to shreds, and while he had no visible wounds he looked completely exhausted. Both Hinata and Sasuke had strange black marks on their necks and were cut up and bruised, and both winced on occasion as though they were in incredible pain. All three were red in the face and panting. What were you all up to in there? Iruka finally found his voice. You were 10 minutes from failing. What were we up to? Oh, I don't know, said a slightly hysterical Naruto. Is this after we got attacked by the snake Sanin? After Sasuke and Hinata got cursed and ended up in a coma for most of the exam. After I had to fight the sound team, solo, then stop my crazy teammates from killing said sound team. After we, in our mad dash for the central tower, had to dodge past the ridiculous melee of all the teams who hadn't gotten all their scrolls yet. You're gonna have to be more specific, Iruka. Naruto stood there panting for a bit. What? Iruka accurately surmised. I'm sorry Iruka, but this is probably above your clearance, and if you keep them talking much longer they're gonna miss the preliminaries. Kakashi appeared next to Iruka, grabbed his students, and all three promptly vanished in a leaf flurry. The four ended up in an abandoned room of the tower. Bursting in 5 seconds later was Uchiha Itachi, similarly red in the face and looking genuinely unsettled. You saw Orochi fucking Maru? Asked the genius. Extrapolate. Now. They spent a few minutes going over a brief account of what had happened in the forest, and then Kakashi went over the seals on their necks, mumbling worriedly to himself. Fuck. Itachi growled. Fuck 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 fuck. He's who you got it from, huh? Naruto side-eyed Sasuke. Uh-huh. The younger Uchiha nodded. This is bad. I asked to be on Team 7's Overwatch. I asked, but they told me I was too attached. Dense shits. Overwatch? Hinata asked. Each genin team had a jonin or chunin watching over them. They were supposed to bail them out if they were going to die, and incapacitate them if they opened their scrolls early. Kakashi explained. Then we found 4 jonin. Hadn't called in, and by the time we found them both dead nobody knew where you were and they wouldn't let me go look for you because test conditions. Whole damn exam should have been called off. Itachi was still complaining. 30 seconds until roll is called in the center arena. Kakashi pointed out. Right. Itachi growled. Kakashi, see what you can do about the seals. Naruto. He grabbed his arm. There was a blink and a flash and a fluttering of crow's wings and Naruto was hurled out onto some hard concrete. He got his bearing and looked left. A long line of genin looked across at him. He blinked. This is so like you. Ino sighed. Alright. Looks like Uzumaki's here too. Sighed the jonin across from the line. That makes 13. Naruto found himself in the middle of a massive arena. Along the long line he spotted mostly familiar faces. He waved brightly at Gaara, who smiled back perfectly innocently, traded thumbs-ups with Rock Lee, and then gave Choji a nod of respect, from one food enthusiast to another. That made 3 teams beside him, the Sand siblings, Team Guy, the Ino Shikacho combo and... He blinked. The hell are they doing here? Dosu looked back at him. Oh, hello there. The sound trio looked remarkably worse for wear. Dosu's leg was broken, Zaku couldn't walk without a limp and Kin was just shooketh. We passed. Duh. Zaku smirked at him triumphantly. No you didn't. Naruto pointed, outraged. Those 3 are working with Orochimaru. They said so. Dosu's eyes widened for a moment before calming. Oh yeah, sounds ridiculous. Prove it. We can though. Naruto exclaimed. The Yamanaka clan can literally read your minds. We can. Ino confirmed. Oh, right, my bad. Itachi was suddenly there again. Yeah, these 3 are coming with me. He grabbed the sound trio, and with an incredibly aesthetic crow variant body flicker, they were gone. I hate my job sometimes. The jonin murmured to himself, before coughing. Alright, my name's Gekko Hayate and I'm going to be proctoring the 3rd stage of the exams. There are now 10 of you. Great. 12. Naruto pointed out. Both my teammates also passed. Your teammates aren't here. Gekko replied, boredly. So by my reckoning that means they're both disqualified. Kakashi said you might say that. Naruto remembered. He also said that he knows exactly when the Anbu member Possum gets off shift and 3 topics she finds interesting. Your teammates are both undisqualified. Gekko hurriedly corrected. So that leaves us with 12. Not a power of 2, so not an ideal tournament bracket, but we can work with it. So, the 3rd round of the Chunin exams is a tournament. You fight each other to show off your skills to see how chunin worthy you are. What? Naruto gasped. What now? Gekko turned back to him. That makes no sense. Naruto exclaimed. Why would you judge our skills competitively? Wouldn't there be a control level where you say, yes, now they're chunin? Why the hell would you make it so that our success is based off how well we compare to other people? You don't have to win to be promoted. Gekko explained. It's theoretically possible to lose once and be promoted, or win the whole thing and not get through. Also, the village makes thousands on the gambling. Fine, but it's still bad. Naruto sighed. Unfortunately. Gekko continued, bracing himself. As 12 is, quite frankly, way too many possible chunin, we have decided to do a preliminary round, reducing the number to 6. Failing this round will prevent you from being promoted. What? Naruto exploded. That makes even less sense. Why would only an arbitrary number of genin be allowed to pass? What happens if the second best fights the best in the preliminaries and you lose out on someone totally capable of becoming chunin? What if? Gekko glared at him. Look, if we pass too many chunin, people assume the standards have been lowered, the randomizer is probably rigged anyway, and if you don't stop whining, then possum or no possum, I am disqualifying you and your whole team right now. Naruto fell into a begrudging silence. Why do you care so much? Whispered Tenten from next to him. I have a lot of experience with unfair tests. Naruto explained, sullenly. Rules like this screwed me over all the time back at the academy. First round. Gekko reviewed a device in his hand. Is Yamanaka Ino vs Sabaku no Konkuro. That's your second name. Of the Sands. Alright, whatever, get into position. Naruto made his way up into the stands, and was somewhat surprised to see Kakashi sat there, reading another one of his books. Sensei. He called out, running over. Oh hey, Naruto. The Jonin remarked, not looking up. Where are my teammates? Naruto begged. Jiraiya came over to look at them, so my minimal expertise wasn't needed. Replied his sensei. So you ditched them? Yeah. Naruto gaped at him. Why are you not worried? I am. Kakashi let some killing intent bleed out for a moment. But in this case it's better for me not to get involved. That's some advice you might want to pay attention to, Naruto. Doing nothing can be the best choice. In the arena, Konkuro squared off against Ino. She looked determined, he seemed perfectly casual. Jiraiya said that he knew a sealing ritual that could stop what he's calling a curse mark, the thing on your teammates' necks. Kakashi continued. But it will take a while. We need to hope this next fight takes its sweet time so he can do his thing before they have to fight. Begin. Called out Gekko. Without waiting, Ino sprinted forwards and pulled a kunai, spearing it into Konkuro's throat. Konkuro's head tilted. Ino backed up slowly, gulping. Konkuro, knife still stuck in his throat, began walking jankily forwards, arms outstretched towards her. She screamed. Well, so much for long and drawn out. Sighed Kakashi, after 2 minutes of Konkuro chasing a horrified Ino around the arena. Wasn't a very impressive fight. Naruto huffed, still angry about the injustices of the system. These are prelims, he isn't being judged yet. Kakashi explained. He's managed to look intimidating all while revealing nothing about his fighting style. Most of the other genin won't even have realized he was a puppet. He was a what? Konkuro finally pinned Ino to the floor, causing repeated screams of, I forfeit. I forfeit. Please don't let Konkuro-kun do any horrible unseemly things to my young innocent body. Dude, what have you been reading? Came a muffled voice from within the bandages on Konkuro's back. Okay, we're still good. Naruto thought aloud. We just need neither of them to be called up for another few rounds, right? Next match. Said Gekko. Sasuke vs Tenten. Or, I could open my big mouth, and everything could go wrong. Naruto sighed. I'll get him. Kakashi vanished. So what did the old pervert say? Naruto asked, eyes roaming over his friend. Not in a weird way, he was visibly worried. I'm in constant pain and exhausted, but otherwise I'm perfectly fit for duty. Sasuke grimaced as another bolt of agony flashed through him. Problem is, this thing activates when I put chakra into it, and since I have no control over it, it just turns on when I use any chakra over a base level, period. So no great fireball. Naruto understood. Nope. Naruto gasped. But Sasuke, What will you do without your only technique? Ha fucking ha. But seriously, you have to fight the best Kenjutsu genin in Konoha without any ninjutsu or genjutsu. Basically, Naruto let that get him down for about 2 seconds before his boundless optimism came back. Well, I'm sure you'll manage it. It's you. Sasuke shook his head, laughing. Your madness is infectious. Alright, let's do this. He walked out onto the arena floor. Tenten stood across from him. Do you want to forfeit now? She called across to him, sympathetically. You look dead on your feet. Sorry, but no, Sasuke said back. I've kinda gotta win the whole tournament. There are 2 people allowed to knock me out, and they aren't you. Suit yourself. Tenten shrugged. Reaching behind herself, she pulled the large scroll from her back and held it in her arms. Ready, called Gekko. Begin. Sasuke moved. This was the first time in a while he was going all out against a fellow genin, and not a ninja several times his own power. The effects of the training seal, especially now it was turned off, became immediately apparent. He was halfway towards Tenten before she could move. The weapons master unfurled her sealing scroll and flung it, and out the front in a plume of smoke came a flurry of shuriken. Sasuke had been worried he wouldn't be able to dodge without his Sharingan active, but dodge he did, sliding and jumping around the projectiles. Appearing beside her he launched a kick, aiming his heel towards her abdomen. It me a sturdy shaft of wood. Tenten twisted the bow staff to turn away his foot and brought one end down on the back of his knee, making him lurch away. He punched, and she blocked, and all he got was smarting knuckles. Much to his chagrin, Tenten actually had a height advantage over him, and she knew how to leverage it, so grappling for control of the staff was pointless. The status quo was against Sasuke, so he changed it, pulling a kunai and swinging it to bisect the staff with a neat motion. Tenten, smiling victoriously, shifted her grip. Now wielding 2 smaller sticks, she attacked in a vicious flurry that made Sasuke desperately wish he had bracers of some sort. He was able, after taking a few bruises, to cut the sticks into small enough pieces as to be useless. Tenten threw the remnants at him and drew nunchucks. Seriously? Sasuke exclaimed, moving back onto the defensive. Aren't you worried the competitors will learn to counter all your weapons? You've seen 4. She grinned, swinging them rapidly. I'm expert in 25, and proficient in 40 more. Why? He caught up the nunchucks in his kunai, and she seamlessly switched to a Morningstar. The most basic level of combat is the same for all weapons. She answered, swinging the ball and chain. Guy-sensei claimed it, and I proved it. Also, when I'm practicing with a new weapon I don't have to spar with Lee. Touché. He caught the Morningstar by the chain and wrenched it from her, only to catch a brass-knuckled strike to the face. He swung the spiked ball at her himself, but it clanked against the shield. What self-respecting ninja uses a shield? On her free arm. She had made a mistake though. Brass knuckles were taijutsu. He parried a few punches and was able to land a strike to her face in return, then grabbed onto her shield and cartwheeled. The maneuver would have broken her arm had she not relinquished the shield to his hands, but as it was she fell backwards and summoned another weapon pair from her scroll. The hook swords glinted. Those things are vicious. Sasuke nodded appreciatively, equipping the shield to his own arm after checking it for traps. But you've checkmated yourself. How? Her eyes narrowed. By checking me. He grinned at her. Now I have to do something insane. Her eyebrows raised. Oh no. They've corrupted you. He sighed. Afraid so. It's not so bad once you get used to it. He sprinted at her. The first 2 sword swings he caught on his shield, but the third he dodged, bringing the blunt edge of the metal plate down on her arm. She was too good to drop the weapon due to the pain, but it was enough for him to pull it off her with his free hand. The 2 blades locked between them. Sasuke marshaled his chakra. Now you're in checkmate. She grinned, pulling a crossbow. Really? From her back and aiming it at his stomach. In her moment of victory, her eyes met his. She blanched. His Sharingan flashed red. She pulled the trigger on impulse, launching a bolt into his gut, and he winced and closed his eyes. It was enough for her to disentangle their weapons, hook his leg with hers, and drop him on his back, leveling the business end of the sword at his throat. I win. She breathed. I forfeit. He grumbled. Victory to Tenten. Called out Gekko. She whooped, dropping her weapons and turning back to her team. Well done. Your youth was shining brightly. Lee stuck his thumb up at her with a grin. Not really. Sighed Sai. Tenten blinked at him. What? This isn't really happening. Sai explained. You tried hard though. Good fight. All that was what Tenten thought happened. What actually happened was that after she met Sasuke's eyes she froze in place, genjutsu taking hold, and then fell unconscious to the floor. Does that count? Sasuke called. Victory goes to Sasuke. Called out Gekko. Nice going Sasuke. Naruto yelled from the stands. Wait. Didn't you just use chakra? Won't that? Yep. Sasuke winced, as the curse mark on his shoulder began glowing red. Ow. Okay, I'm going to Jiraiya now. Ow. Fuck, this was a terrible idea. Chapter 19. Who's the edgiest of them all? 10 years earlier. Congratulations on your victory. Jay no fucking way. The Chunin stared. 2 genin and 4 scrolls were in front of him. Itachi absently picked his nose. So that was round 2, right? You. The Chunin stood there, flabbergasted. How? It's been, what, 2 hours? I know. I'm disappointed in myself as well. Sighed Neji. My movement was terribly inefficient. May I have another go? I could at least half the time it took. You. The Chunin spluttered. But you were split up. How did you find each other? Byakugan. Neji offered. Wait, were we not supposed to be split up? That doesn't make sense. Itachi frowned. This wouldn't have even been a challenge if we'd been paired up. I wouldn't have had to worry about whether or not to help save that other team of Leaf Genin, we'd have just gone in and done it. I saw that. Neji remarked. Good work, by the way. Thank you. GG go ahead. The Chunin moved to the side of the 2 monster children and let them pass. Oh, by the way. Itachi turned around. I do have one question. What's the plan for picking up the ninja who were following us? Because we sort of left them in the woods. The Overwatch ninja. The Chunin blinked. The Jonin looking after you so you don't open the scrolls early. Well, yes. Neji tilted his head. Were we not supposed to incapacitate them? The Chunin fainted. Present day. Okay. Maybe Hinata will have time to get her seal fixed. Let's see. Next round is Hinata versus Sai. Goddammit. Fuck. I'll go get her. Are you sure it's a good idea to kill more Konoha ninja? Orochimaru asked, casually. I didn't fancy my chances holding back, Kabuto reasoned. And after they saw me it was their corpses or my cover. He began performing a specific jutsu he'd learned from his medical training to turn the ninja's brains to mush. Fair enough. Orochimaru conceded. He was leaned against the wall of an alleyway, trying to keep the blood of the corpses off his feet. How went the exam? I tried to make contact with Team 7 to assess their progress, but they spent the vast majority of the time hiding in a cave. Kabuto apologized. They only got out for an hour or 2 before finishing. While looking for them, however, my team encountered Team Guy. That's Sai and his friends. He clarified. I see. Orochimaru mused. How is our good friend Danzo, by the way? Still scheming, and possibly still chasing after Hiruzen's hat. Kabuto sighed. Subtext from Sai implied he had a reason to get through to the finals, so I threw the fight. I hope you don't mind. No, appease him for now. Allowed the snake Sanin. As long as he doesn't interrupt what we're organizing with Suna, he can do as he wishes. There was a cough, and he turned to look at its origin annoyedly. Excuse me. We're trying to ignore you. Apologies, sir. Dosu dipped his head. He and his team were huddled in the corner of the alley as their superiors talked. No, it's fine, go ahead. It's just. Dosu tilted his head in thought. Why are we still alive? We've failed our mission and our cover is blown. Why isn't your pet medic turning us to mush? Perceptive as always, young Dosu. Orochimaru crooned. In truth, you haven't really failed. I sent you in to infiltrate the exam and test whoever I decided to gift the curse mark, and you did. But we got caught, protested Zaku, somewhat masochistically. We had to take out that team with the dog and bug dudes to get into the 3rd round, but then Uzumaki tattled on us immediately. That was very stupid, yes. Agreed their master. But I still have uses for you and your team in this mission, and that means I need you alive. Although it would be nicer to have your corpses so they don't go looking for you. The Sand siblings killed a trio in the forest. Kabuto offered. With a clothes switch and sufficient mutilation, they could be mistaken for these three. Orochimaru stood fully and began leaving. Perfect. And I'll go pretend to be a distraught and outraged sensei over the death of my students. He sighed dramatically. Truly, there is no rest for the wicked. Hinata walked into position across from Sai. He smiled at her emptily. It was one of the reasons she didn't like him. Her clan had many books on reading people's emotions, and while she had originally struggled with it, she could now often spot whenever someone was lying to her, except very experienced ninja. But now she couldn't ignore it, and it upset her when she spotted it. One of the most appealing things about Naruto was that he was terrible at concealing his thoughts, and rarely even tried. Sai though, it was like his face moved, and his brain was blank behind it. He was untrustable. Are you well, Miss Hyuga? He asked, still smiling. It wouldn't do for us to compete when you are not at full strength. You will find me more than adequate. She replied, simply. Excellent. Sai's smile widened. Please do not hold back. The curse mark pulsed, and Hinata made sure not to show it. No chakra flow, the Toad Sage had said. Sure. It's not like her entire fighting style relied completely on chakra flow. The bursts from her fingers and palms weren't really taxing on her reserves, but they were enough to set the curse mark off. As was summoning, as was the Byakugan, as was her entire arsenal, which she was now realizing was a very dangerous weakness. Her fingers twitched. Traditional pressure point katas it is then. Are both contestants ready? Gecko confirmed. They nodded. All right then. Begin. Hinata knew Sai would expect her to run straight at him. But she was tired, so that's exactly what she did. He was faster than Tenten, Hinata realized with a start, as he began drawing in his scroll. Because Hinata was faster than Sasuke and Sai's ink and paper flowed to form shuriken when she was further than he had been. The mild-mannered, innocuous member of Team Guy was actually good. And she had never actually seen Sai fight. To quote Sasuke, oh shit. Then the time for retrospection was past, she was ducking and dodging and sorely missing her perfect vision. Sai backed up, still drawing, and then a trio of snakes left his scroll and slithered towards her, bodies made of paper and ink. Summoning jutsu. Blood in the ink. No summon looked like that. She couldn't check, of course, because she couldn't turn on the Byakugan. The first snake launched at her throat. She caught it around its neck, but it extended unnaturally to continue biting at her. Undeterred, she brought her other arm up and tore it in half. The other two snakes moved to wrap around her legs as Sai threw another brace of paper shuriken. Grimacing, Hinata jumped into the air. In one turn, she drew and flung two kunai at the snakes beneath her, pinning them to the floor, then twisted until her fallible eyes could see the incoming projectiles, and plucked two of them from the air, deflecting the rest. She landed. Naruto whooped from the stands, then she flung her two shuriken at Sai. He leaned left. Well done. The pale boy judged, still smiling. Let's up the difficulty. He finished a drawing. Leaping from his scroll was a porcupine. Is that going to turn into armor or something? Hinata asked, hesitantly. The porcupine saw her, glared and launched a volley of spines from its back. Okay then. Hinata ran. The porcupine, apparently, did not seem to be running out of ink anytime soon. It fired in a line, not a cone, but that line had some width to it, which meant that the closer she got the higher risk she ran of it pegging her. She had made herself too paranoid about there being something in that ink to allow that. Problem was that unless she was in Sai's face pressing him, A, she didn't have any attack options and B, he could do whatever he wanted. This was demonstrated quite clearly when he pulled out another ink creature, this time a skunk. She dodged another blast of spines and looked at it in confusion. It waltzed outwards, until it was just as far away as Hinata realized with a start she had managed to get before Sai had reacted to her. Sai had good game sense too, why hadn't she picked any of this up before? Then the skunk turned its back to her and oh come on. Thick black smoke began spewing from its. It was farting, that's what it was farting. Really? She yelled at Sai. He shrugged. The smoke was spreading throughout the arena. Now this was definitely poisonous, or at least she was meant to think it was. He was trying to pin her into a corner. She threw an experimental shuriken at the animal, but Sai intercepted it with one of his own. She grimaced. So if it could affect her with just a touch, she was dead without using rotation. If it couldn't, though, Sai had just signed his own death warrant. Defeat warrant. Bad curse mark. Hinata took in a deep breath, and sprinted into the clouds. It's beautiful. Naruto gripped the railing between him and the battlefield, staring down at the ink creatures. A weaponized fart. I'd never thought it was possible. You aren't worried it's going to hurt your teammate? Kakashi eyed him. Hinata'll be fine. Naruto dismissed. But look at it. It's farting. This is a level of pranking I've never seen before. I need to step up my game. In the arena, Sai waited patiently and watched. The smoke broiled but stayed in place, probably influenced by his chakra. It had been a good 20 seconds since Hinata had entered the smoke cloud and the battle had halted in its tracks. 20 Ryo, she never comes out, shouted Asuma. I'm in. Kakashi shouted back, then held his hand up in the air. Hinata burst from the smoke running straight at Sai, and threw a kunai. A grumbling Asuma chucked a pouch of coins into Kakashi's waiting palm. Sai dodged the kunai, boredly, as his porcupine fired another volley of spikes at Hinata, who took a breath and vanished back into the mist. Then the kunai turned into a Hinata. Sai spun in place to catch her palm on his lead hand, then pulled a sword from his back to cut at her, but Hinata was still faster than him at close range. The porcupine had to turn around and fire, clipping Sai with needles in order to catch her in her assault, but by that point she had already deadened every nerve in his right arm. His drawing arm. And then she popped. The real Hinata was already charging back out of the smoke, flinging even more knives at him and his porcupine. Naruto had handed her his spares before the fight. Suddenly, Sai's eyes widened. They actually widened. And trapping his scroll with his knees, he used his offhand to put pen to paper, then flung a paper shuriken towards Hinata. Then, in between them, erupted a great ball of flame. Hinata coughed, and staggered to her feet. That clanless peasant. He's actually really good. The shadow clone splits chakra rather than consumes it. That's what Kakashi had told her. That technicality meant it didn't set off the curse mark, which was a godsend, one she had taken full advantage of. Even so, she had expected him to take out the shadow clone disguised as a kunai. She had expected him to survive her real body's simultaneous assault, even with one hand. She had not expected him to realize the shadow clone had tagged his scroll with an explosive tag, then put the tag onto a paper shuriken and throw it in time to blow up all her other projectiles and hit her. She plucked one knife out of her padded white jacket and glared at him. I killed your skunk. He nodded. It had been caught in the explosion. It wasn't very useful, don't worry. Besides, it's about to get replaced. Cursing, she jumped to her feet, but the porcupine's attack pinned her down again. She summoned a shadow clone, planning to perform a similar maneuver as had killed the skunk, and then an eagle burst from the scroll. Hinata gulped. It was big. Its body itself was twice as long as her, and its wingspan was proportionally giant. If it were a summon, it would have cost almost as much chakra as she possessed. Summons were teleported in, not made, but they were alive, not ink facsimiles, so she didn't know how the cost of it compared, but it was obviously dangerous. Do it. She bit out. Her shadow clone moved behind her. The eagle screeched, and buffeted its wings. A massive gust of wind hurtled towards her. Behind her, her shadow clone narrowed its eyes, and began striking at various points on the back of her neck. She felt the area start to go numb, and moved into stance. 8 trigrams. She shouted. Rotation. She span in place. The eagle's wind had no effect on the Hyuga jutsu, forming a small whirlwind around her. Hinata ended her spin and immediately drew a scroll from her jacket pocket, biting her thumb and smearing the blood on the parchment. She only had so much time, after all. Her shadow clone's efforts had deadened all chakra points that lead to her curse mark, effectively cutting it off from her circuit and letting her use ninjutsu with impunity. It had the side effect of cutting off chakra flow to her brain, but that left her with a good 30 seconds to end the fight before she passed out. She poured chakra into the scroll and it responded, as she called upon a newly familiar summon. Forsooth, the first owl she had met popped into existence, took one look at the battlefield, and took to the air, launching a screech of defiance and beelining for the paper eagle. Hinata and her clone activated their Byakugan and charged straight forwards at Sai. The porcupine could only hit one of them, and only made the real Hinata veer away before the clone was upon it. Sai threw more shuriken, but Hinata Prime got in the way with another rotation, allowing the clone to slam a palm into the porcupine, shredding it with a burst of chakra. Sai's face tightened imperceptibly, though anyone's eyes but Hinata's wouldn't have caught it. 20 seconds of consciousness remaining. Forsooth grabbed onto Sai's eagle and began tearing into it with beak and claw. The paper animal silently struck back, but Forsooth was bulkier, and did far more damage. Scraps of paper fell to the ground. The two Hinata fell upon Sai, who drew his sword with his one remaining good arm and kicked his scroll behind him. His attention fully on her, he withstood for a few moments, before going into a one-armed somersault. In a display that she almost didn't believe even as she saw it, he flipped his sword between his feet and kicked it at the original Hinata, at which range she had to catch it to avoid being impaled, and skidded backwards as her clone pressed forwards. Mid-somersault, Sai drew with his left hand on his scroll and whipped the whole thing towards her. The Hinata shadow clone could see the chakra in the paper, and saw it form something very similar to an explosive tag. She trapped it between her legs, but now her easily destroyable body wouldn't keep the explosion from hitting the real Hinata. Sai's smile turned just a little cruel. 10 seconds until she lost consciousness. Darkness began to spread across her 360 vision, and she started to feel dizzy and faint. She threw Sai's sword into the air. Her shadow clone noticed it immediately and started flashing through the hand seals for the substitution jutsu. Sai immediately realized what she was doing but was too busy in his retreat to interfere. Sai's sword stabbed up into his eagle, eliciting a silent wail from the thing. Then the sword switched places with Hinata's clone, and the scroll trapped between her legs. The scroll exploded, popping the shadow clone immediately, and tearing the paper eagle immediately into shreds. The real Hinata on the ground grabbed the sword from her clone's original position, throwing it hilt first at Sai's shoulder. His right shoulder. She saw the muscles in his deadened arm twitch, then his left moved up to try and snatch the blade, but he was too slow, being hit in the shoulder and sent spinning. Then she was on top of him. The palm strikes rained in. 8 trigrams. She shouted, once he was fully unable to react. 64 palms. She had learned that lesson from Orochimaru. Sai's limp form collapsed to the floor, as the burning remnants of his eagle fell around them. Call it. She snapped, out of breath. Victory goes to Hinata. Gecko confirmed. And someone get her a doctor. Yes, a doctor would probably be good. Hinata looked up to the stands. Naruto was there, cheering loudly with his fist in the air. She'd done it. She'd won, without losing control, without opening the curse mark, and he was happy. She might have smiled, had consciousness not left her. As it was, Forsooth flew down and gently lowered her body to the floor next to Sai's. Chapter 20. Yeah, but, Lee is Lee. Curse mark design, version 4.8 summary. I would finally be willing to call this technique complete. Following is a list of all features and side effects. The curse mark can be applied by me personally in a ritual funinjutsu that I can perform relatively quickly. Its purpose is to mimic Jugo's ability to passively summon senjutsu chakra from the environment. Bite me Jiraiya, you fat old asshole. The curse mark stage 1 activates after a few days of suffering. Or it might kill you. It increases the user's physical capabilities by a flat amount, proportional to how much senjutsu chakra is absorbed. The curse mark requires a constant supply of the user's chakra to keep activated, and the user can vary how much power they want to provide and in turn, receive, which is visible by how far the black markings have spread across the user's body. Activation of the curse mark to some degree is almost certain when using chakra for any techniques. This can be mitigated by precise chakra control or putting an additional seal atop the mark, not like I'm gonna though lol. Use of the mark, similarly to effects seen in Jugo, will erode the user's sense of reason without strict self-control and mental discipline. Even possessing the mark will cause violent, depressive urges in the subject over time, letting me control them easier, so you know, nice side effect. Through the death of the user, a situation I have made recoverable using the Mind Awakening Pill, page 36, the user can access the curse mark stage 2. This causes an even more dramatic increase in physical abilities, as well as a seemingly random change to the user's appearance, usually resulting in a beast-like appearance. Also, sometimes cool extra limbs. In stage 2, The curse mark allows the user to enhance their traditional jutsu with senjutsu chakra, increasing their power and often applying additional effects. Note to self: find a way to steal Jiraiya's Sage Mode notes. Personal Research Handbook of Orochimaru. Maniacs. Absolute maniacs. Jiraiya was mumbling to himself as Naruto walked in. The Sannin had apparently made base camp in the abandoned room Kakashi had first taken Team 7 to, and was now kneeling over Sasuke and Hinata. Itachi was pacing in the corner, mumbling to himself, 2 Tomo. He got 2 Tomo already. That's amazing. Are they going to be alright? Naruto asked, stepping in. Jiraiya sighed. Yeah, they should be, despite their best efforts to the contrary. Bad enough my ex-partner put a curse mark on them both, they had to go ahead and try and ruin their bodies a bit more before I got to them. No regrets. Chuckled Sasuke from the floor, getting a swat on the back of his head for his trouble. Listen, midgets. Jiraiya declared. Orochimaru was almost as dramatic as I am, but he was not one for vague or fancy naming techniques. If he calls a jutsu the 8-headed serpent, it makes him turn into an 8-headed serpent. If he called this thing the curse mark, then it isn't something you want to agitate just to progress through the exams. We have to make Chunin. Sasuke protested. All 3 of us have made at least 5 separate. I need to get stronger speeches since we got back from Wave. I could have gotten you buys, you absolute morons. Jiraiya sighed. Quote. Oh. Whiskers. Jiraiya pinched his forehead. Who's up next? Lee is fighting that Gaara guy from Suna. Naruto shrugged. Both are pretty cool. I don't know who I want to win, but I'm pretty sure Lee has it in the bag. Why are you looking at me like that? Guy's not son is fighting Sabaku no Gaara and you think he'll win? Itachi asked, incredulously. I mean, yeah. The blonde blinked back at him. Lee has the 8 gates. He opened the first one in taijutsu training once and trounced the 3 of us at once. He and Sasuke shuddered. That had not been a fun session for Team 7. And he can open like, what, 4 of them if he has 2. He basically has this tournament in the bag, we've been brainstorming plans just for him. Naruto. Gaara is a Jinchuriki. Jiraiya said, slowly. Yeah, I know. Naruto replied, nonplussed. I'm a Jinchuriki. I could throw a massive snake. Lee can probably throw more than one massive snake. Genius power scaling. Jiraiya looked across at Itachi. The Jonin sighed and moved towards the door. I'll be there to stop them killing each other. Fix up my brother, old man. Itachi body flickered and was gone. Jiraiya took up a pot of red ink and an old-fashioned quill, and began drawing on Sasuke's back. I'm going to give you both a crash course in Funinjutsu, just so you're not completely clueless. Kinda like how hand seals and nature transformations act as instructions for molding chakra, seals are written instructions that mold whatever chakra touches it. Some, like the chakra-activated explosive tags, are relatively simple. Others are more complicated. Seals to hold a tailed beast in your body are pretty damn complicated. Whatever Orochimaru's done to your friends. I gotta admit even I don't really know how it works. Reassuring. Sasuke drawled. I've seen it before. Admitted Jiraiya. I think you know her, actually. Purple hair. Great rack, thing for snakes. Anko has a curse mark. Naruto gaped. Jiraiya grinned. I was able to get pretty intimate with her. With her curse mark. Now both these clan trust fund babies. Hey. Have different marks to each and other and to Miss Mitarashi. Marks you just might recognize. They were the same marks as on the scrolls we carried through the forest. Naruto explained to his confused-looking teammate. I had a lot of time waiting in the cave. Sasuke has the earth symbol on his neck, Hinata has the heaven symbol. Jiraiya nodded. And the amount of senjutsu chakra I can sense off these is even higher than in Anko's. Sen what now? Natural energy. Jiraiya extrapolated. An extra dimension to a ninja's arsenal most people never get to learn. Teach me. Later. Jiraiya dismissed him and started muttering to himself. I didn't think you could manage Sage Mode. That's what happens when you turn your body into snakes, you old shit, but apparently you found some other crazy cheating way to do it. This is just like you. Are my teammates going to be okay? Naruto interrupted. Yes. The Toad Sage sighed, going back to drawing on Sasuke's back. I can't remove the marks, but I can put my own seal on top of them to control them. Your teammates will still be able to turn them on deliberately, although that's a terrible idea, but otherwise they won't activate unless they completely lose control. He finished, and put his hand on Sasuke's back. Now scram. But I wanna stay. Naruto complained. I can't concentrate while you're agonizing over my every move. Jiraiya countered. Your fight could be any minute. Go back to the stands. We'll be fine, Naruto. Sasuke reassured. Unhappy, the blonde left. You sent him out because it's gonna hurt, didn't you? Sasuke concluded, once Naruto was gone. A lot. Jiraiya confirmed, channeling his chakra. There will probably be screaming. Sasuke scoffed. Look, I don't know who you're used to dealing with, but I'm an Uchiha, holy fuck. When Naruto reached the arena, he was greeted with Temari and Shikamaru stood at other sides of the arena staring at each other. Hey, why aren't Gaara and Lee fighting? He asked Itachi. They already finished. The Jonin still seemed somewhat shell-shocked. Lee won that fast. Nope. Gaara won. Did he? Lee went fifth gate. Itachi cut across. It wasn't enough. Gaara's arsenal is pretty much built to take down melee fighters. And ranged fighters. And, well, I'll show you the match later. Naruto whistled. Okay. Great. I'll just throw out all my anti-Lee plans then. He wandered over to the edge of the stands. In the arena, Temari had just blown another wind gust at Shikamaru, who had jumped behind a tree to avoid the attack. Anyway, I'm next. Okay. Naruto started stretching. Better get warmed up. This could end any minute. 45 minutes later. Okay. One adult-sized genin or one child-sized jonin. Does the jonin have the same chakra reserves? No, it's like a jonin mind, but in a normal child's body, so same chakra and fitness. And then the other one's an idiot but with a jonin's body and stuff. Yeah, I mean, does the jonin in A Kid get standard ninja equipment? Because without a knife and some ninja wire he isn't going to. Wait, look, something's happening. Down in the arena, Shikamaru's shadow darted through the shadow of a shuriken parachute he had set into the sky. The audience watched with bated breath as Temari darted backwards and just managed to keep away from the shadow. The audience collectively groaned. Come on. Get it over with already. Sasuke and Hinata had both recovered from their curse mark ceiling, and joined Naruto in the stadium. The match was still going on. Hey, fuck off. Temari snapped at the crowd. This is what real ninja battles look like sometimes. She's distracted. Itachi noted. So what? Naruto waved his hand dismissively, flopped back in his seat. It's not like Shik's gonna do anything about it. Sasuke's eyes widened. No, he has. Look. While Temari had been glaring at the spectators, Shikamaru had thrown a kunai. Now his shadow stretched out towards Temari, through the shadow of the parachute, through the shadow of the still-moving kunai, and tagged her. The crowd held their breath. Locked in his shadow possession jutsu, Temari was forced to walk towards Shikamaru until they were face to face. Shikamaru moved his hand to his crotch. Dude, what the fuck are you doing? Temari asked with a heavy blush, as her own hands followed suit. Shikamaru's hand lingered for a moment, before reaching for the deliberately in a peculiar place kunai holster on his inner thigh. He drew the blade. Temari's hand came up empty, but she sighed in relief. And a little disappointment, not that she'd ever admit it. Are you going to make me do this? Shikamaru asked, boredly, holding the kunai up to her throat. I forfeit. Temari bit out. Victory to Shikamaru. Gekko drawled, from where he had been sat reading one of Jiraiya's books. The crowd universally cheered. Oh, shut up. Final match. Naruto vs Choji. Finally. I know, right? I would have had my third lunch by now. Naruto looked across at Choji with a raised eyebrow. When did you have your second? Ino's leftover rations. This diet she's on is great. It doesn't really sound healthy for a ninja. No, it's great for me. Oh, got it. Are both contestants ready? Gekko interrupted. They nodded. All right. Let the final round of the preliminaries begin. Naruto grinned and put his hands together. Null. The training seal on his back deactivated, and he charged to meet Choji. Despite his obviously unhealthy eating habits, Choji was one of the more genuinely competent of the Konoha genin. He was the son of a prominent ninja clan, and had always been able to completely trounce Naruto in sparring, not unlike everyone else in his class except sometimes Sakura. But now Naruto had been training with Might Guy every day for almost 2 months, and the time he spent not working with that taijutsu monster he wore the training seal that applied resistance to all his movements. The difference caused by suddenly moving through air and not cement was one not easy to calculate, but the result was obvious. Naruto blitzed forwards and punched Choji flat in the stomach, with enough force to send him skidding to a halt halfway across the arena. Choji coughed once. The Konoha genin, and most of their sensei, looked on in shock as the orange-clad boy lifted up his fist and flexed it in front of his face with a perplexed, huh. This was his first time since graduation fighting a fellow genin who hadn't been through the same pain he had. Choji got up, grimacing, and formed hand seals. Akamichi-style ninjutsu. Human bullet tank. His head popped inwards, his body expanded, and a giant spinning ball of human started rolling towards his opponent. Naruto held his ground. Uzumaki-style ninjutsu. He countered. Obey the damn laws of physics. This was a jutsu he had realized he possessed while fighting Orochimaru, and perfected while waiting in the cave. Around him appeared well over 40 shadow clones. The first sprinted straight towards Choji and did the transformation jutsu, turning into a large metal ramp. Choji's glorified hamster ball rolled right up the ramp and into the air. The obey the damn laws of physics jutsu was, at its heart, throwing lots of shadow clones at something big really fast so that it falls over. This is what the shadow clones did, one after the other slamming into the bullet tank, which was a lot less massive than Orochimaru's snake. The successive impacts soon bled dry Choji's forward momentum, then began to send him backwards as he fell, crashing him into the wall of the arena. Naruto grinned, and strode forwards. He was confident. For once, not fighting with a desperate bravery, but genuine belief in his own abilities. Note to self. Do more of this. Choji sat up and glared across at him. When did you get so strong? Naruto smiled back. I dunno. About last month. Choji huffed. Fair enough. I didn't wanna do this, but until you get the representative you deserve, I'm not losing a fight to you. Also Asuma-sensei will pay for my next meal if I win. Oh damn, really? If my ninja way trademark wasn't on the line, I might let you have that. Choji smiled back. From his pocket, he pulled out a brightly colored pill. You see this? Dad says that in the tournament, I can use this one if I really have to. I think this counts as an emergency. He scoffed the ball. What does it do? Naruto asked, back on guard. Converts the calories stored in my body fat into chakra, said Choji, smugly, as wisps of the stuff started to surround him. About how many calories? About as much as I eat on an average night out. Oh shit. Choji blasted forwards and punched Naruto, who caught the strike on his forearm and skidded backwards a couple meters. Choji continued to press, throwing out a few more punches and an elbow, which Naruto blocked before countering with a hooked first that sent Choji into the air. Naruto jumped up and double-kicked down at him, knocking him down to the floor, but Choji landed on his feet and turned Naruto's follow-up away. The following fight could be accurately described as two very strong children beating the stuffing out of each other. Choji and his food pills were stronger than Naruto, so Naruto quickly started summoning shadow clones. Choji responded by using the partial expansion technique to let him hit more of them at once, so Naruto responded by summoning more shadow clones. At this point, Naruto's willingness to get his hands dirty proved to be a problem for him, as it was easy for Choji to keep track of the only one who didn't immediately pop upon being hit, and barrel after him like a juggernaut. So Naruto made his shadow clones who weren't busy substitute with him to throw off that particular method of attack. He didn't actually know how long Choji could stay in this state, but frankly, the Akamichi didn't look like he'd be running out of calories anytime soon. So Naruto resorted to the other technique he'd been practicing in the cave. He used the swing from one of Choji's oversized hands to catapult him up into the air, then put his hands together in a variation of a familiar seal. Namely, one with a spiked star between his palms. Shadow Shuriken Jutsu. Choji could have dodged 1, 2, or even 5 shuriken. He didn't have much to counter the 100 ninja stars that catapulted in a wide arc towards him. Choji used the expansion jutsu to put his hands up as shields, but that still meant he was getting stabbed repeatedly all over his hands, which were designed to be able to feel very acutely. He grit his teeth desperately against the pain. In the stands, Kakashi raised his eyebrow at Jiraiya. You taught him the Hokage's jutsu. Hiruzen was my Jonin sensei, remember? Jiraiya leant back, chuckling. I picked up a few things. You aren't worried about the message that's going to send. Kakashi didn't let up. Worried. I'm counting on it. Jiraiya. Orochimaru has already marked these two. The Toad Sage gestured to Sasuke and Hinata, who were watching the conversation warily. Your kids are good. Really good. Thanks to these exams, everyone knows it, and now everyone knows whose protection Naruto is under. I'm sick of this political bullshit. Sasuke declared. Get used to it. Haircut. Sighed Kakashi. Public appearance. Manipulation. It's gonna be your whole life sooner or later. It sounds stifling. Hinata commented. That's why it's important to have people you can trust. Jiraiya told her. As one, the two genin looked at each other, then down into the arena. Naruto's jutsu had shredded all his other shadow clones, and the shuriken themselves had dispelled after hitting their target, leaving Choji panting with numerous bleeding cuts on his palms. Naruto was feeling really guilty. Sorry. He called across. I don't want to use that anymore on you, because it's like, really vicious, but I do have the chakra to do it again. Repeatedly. Choji smiled, grimly. Huh. Looks like you've finally grown up a little. Hey, you can apologize by buying me ramen sometime, K. It's a deal. Naruto grinned back. Choji turned to Gekko. I forfeit. The Jonin sighed. Thank God this is finally over. Naruto wins. Woo. Naruto threw his fist up into the air. He could hear his team cheering for him. At least, Sasuke was cheering, but that was about as much as he could hope to get. And with that, the preliminaries are over. Gekko coughed into his fist. Sabaku no Kankuro, Sabaku no Gaara, Uchiha Sasuke, Hinata Hyuga, Nara Shikamaru, and Uzumaki Naruto, that's 6 right. Yeah, that's 6, will progress to the final round of the Chunin exams. Yeah, in 1 month. Yeah. What? Chapter 21. Psychopaths pretending to be sane people. Yeah. Gekko confirmed. A month. What? Why? So we can milk the international visitors for more money. Have you not realized yet that this is basically a massive tourist trap? When this is over, I'm writing a massive rant blog on Ninja Tumblr. Naruto groused. Alright, if you need a reason, it's because we're giving you time to prepare. Gekko explained. We're going to tell you who you'll be fighting first so you can prepare to fight them specifically. Okay, I get we need to prepare for assassinations. Naruto admitted. But in what situation are 2 ninja going to know they're going to fight, then wait a month preparing, then go into a? I can still disqualify you. Gekko warned. Naruto pouted, and stayed silent. The rest of the Chunin hopefuls gathered in the center of the arena as Gekko pulled a set of cards from his pocket, then began unceremoniously dumping most of them onto the ground. All right, he said, eventually. I have 6 cards here. Actually, he dropped another. Now I have 6 cards. He held them out face down. Everybody pick one. The 6 acquiesced. All right. What are your numbers? 1. Said Sasuke, eyeing Hinata. 2. Said Hinata, eyeing Sasuke. 3. Kankuro dutifully reported. Shikamaru held up 4 fingers. 5. Stated Gaara, with the significance of a celestial decree. On 6. Declared Naruto, striking a pose. Alright, great. Gekko deadpanned. That is the order of your fights. First, 1 fights 2. Then 3 fights 4, and 5 fights 6. The reaction from the 6 was immediate. Kankuro and Shikamaru continued to completely ignore each other. Both Jinchuriki turned to look at each other, and both tailed beasts stirred within their stomachs. Sasuke and Hinata locked eyes. Our fight should not be as crazy as theirs will inevitably be. Sasuke decided. Agreed, said Hinata. Both desperately quashed their competitive instincts. The first day of the final round will contain fights 1 and 2. The second day will contain fight 3, and the fight between the 2 winners of the previous day. Then on day 3, the winner of those 2 fights will compete in the final. That means I will only get 2 matches. Gaara said, with a hint of threat. Assuming you beat me. Naruto pointed a finger at him. Yes. When that happens. Oh ho, you are Su-on. I'm sorry, if 4 less or 4 more of you had passed then we wouldn't have this problem. Gecko shot back. But no, now there's 6 of you. Also we do not want the Jinchuriki fighting any more than they have to in case they start murdering the spectators. You rigged handing out the cards just now. Naruto was aghast. Gecko looked at him flatly. Kami, I need a drink. Everything is rigged. Nothing is fair. Everyone is out to get you. Welcome to the life of a ninja. With that, he vanished. The 6 looked at each other. Now what? The answer to that question was, of course, to throw a party. Naruto had originally just planned to invite Sasuke and Hinata around to his apartment to celebrate victory. But then he had thought he should probably invite Shikamaru as well. Since they were friends too, and then he had realized that it would be unfair to invite the Naru without also inviting the rest of his team. So that meant Ino and Choji were also coming, and then he decided it would be unfair not to also bring Gaara. Which naturally meant his teammates had to come too. And then Naruto decided if he was going to include people who hadn't won anyway he may as well invite Team Guy. Tenten was watching over Lee, who had been injured in his fight against Gaara, but Sai still wanted to come, and then he had decided that Sakura's team might feel left out so he invited them too, and then Itachi had officially taken over and redirected the party to the Uchiha compound, because there was no way the 15 people Naruto had just included would fit in his tiny little apartment. Itachi had then gone ahead and included all the team's sensei plus Jiraiya in the invite because Fugaku is going to fucking hate this and I am here for it. Which was what led to the Uchiha Grand Hall being retrofit with tables stacked with food, a stereo with massive speakers, 1 ramen stand courtesy of Ichiraku's, and at least 3 targets for kunai throwing competitions. Somewhere along the line most of the failed ninja from the other nations had been invited, along with at least 5 Anbu, Uruka sensei, the parents of a few ninja clans, and the Hokage. Even the sensei of the 3 sound ninja was here, arguing heatedly with whichever Jonin would talk to him. Not all had originally wanted to come, but you try saying no to an infectiously happy Naruto with a shadow clone's lack of self-preservation. By one wall, Itachi had set up something of a cinema by casting a genjutsu on some willing genin. They were all watching a Sharingan-enhanced replay of all the fights that had occurred so far, and were to all appearances sat munching popcorn watching a brick wall. Stood off to one side in a defensive formation were the 3 Sand siblings. As Gaara and Kankuro had delivered particularly intimidating matches, they had ensured that almost nobody wanted to interact with them. That was until Naruto rolled up on a swivel chair. Gaara Gaara Gaara, he shouted. Itachi showed me your match against Lee. You were amazing. I saw you use that sand force field thing you told me about that one time, it was so cool. Thank you. Gaara replied, smiling in that creepy, slightly dead-eyed way of his. Oh, and you too as well. Naruto turned to the other 2 sand genin. Kankuro, your match was hilarious. Temari, yours was boring as anything, but once I had Itachi give me the abridged version it was actually really interesting. Thank you, I think. Temari demurred. Shikamaru was one hell of an opponent. I don't like him. Kankuro admitted, trying to pick the Nara out from the crowd. He keeps looking at me suspiciously. Temari swatted her brother. And what would you know about a tactical fight? I don't know anyone in Suna who's as good a tactician as him, except our Kazekage of course. He's actually pretty good looking too. Temari blushed a little and looked off into the middle distance. Kankuro looked at his sister like she had grown a second head. The green-clad boy was very challenging. Gaara mused. It was incredibly difficult not to kill him. Yeah, I feel you. Naruto sighed. I've had to train with him. You think you want to kill him after a fight? Wait till he convinces his sensei to take you all through another 5 laps of the hidden village. There was definitely some Kyuubi stirring the first time that happened. So why did you restrain yourself? Gaara asked, tilting his head. Naruto blinked, not really understanding the question. Well, as painful as it is, training with him does make me stronger. And if I kill him, I won't be able to fight him again. Intriguing. Gaara mused. I was going to use the sand coffin to crush your friend's leg into pieces, but I hesitated. At the time I wasn't sure why, but now I think it was for the reason you just described. He frowned. Explain it to me one more time, I'm having trouble grasping it. If you leave people alive to get stronger, they keep being a fun fight as you get stronger. Naruto recited, dutifully. I see. I used to believe that people only existed for me to prove my own ability, and that those below me were nothing. Explained the One-Tails. But letting the weak live because they have potential, thank you, Naruto. You have given me a lot to think about. Temari looked between them in confusion. Did you just convince Gaara to value human life? Who the hell are you? Uzumaki Naruto. He grinned at her. Future Hokage. Drink, sir. Sai walked up to a jonin on the edge of the party, holding 2 glasses of punch. The man looked down at him and smiled. Sure. Thanks, kid. Sai handed the beverage over and leaned on the wall next to him, looking out over the party with lips casually upturned. The man took a sip of his drink. Report. The Hyuga heiress continues to perform well above all expectations. Sai said, expression not changing. She adapted quickly to new circumstances and showed no hesitation using potentially lethal techniques. I was forced to show more power than authorized to push her limits, and she rose admirably to the challenge. The man nodded. Our master forgives your use of the bird summon, Sai. Is there anything else you think is important to mention? Hinata was willing to render herself unconscious in order to succeed. I believe she is easily willing to make personal sacrifices to achieve her goals. That saves us having to train it into her. The man noted. However, Sai cautioned, I do not think she will give her life if ordered, not yet. She is obsessed with the murder of her older brother Neji, and gives no other objective higher precedence. Do you believe that her team will be a problem? The man asked. If Sai hadn't purged all his emotions long ago, he would have laughed. He did anyway, if only to preserve his persona to anyone watching. She does not care about them. They will go to great lengths for her, I think, but not the other way around. Hinata is the type of person to view others as chess pieces. Some more valuable than others, but all fit for sacrifice, bar herself. Is that so? The man finished his drink. I'm sure our master will find this very useful, Sai. Thank you for the punch. It was my pleasure, Yamato. I will continue my surveillance. Sasuke. Sasuke took a deep breath, released it, put a smile on his face, and turned around. Sakura. The pink-haired, admittedly a little cute, girl ran up to him, and then did the thing she liked to do with her posture where she put her hands together and bent forwards, and Kamihi was sick of it. Sasuke. Your fight was amazing. She gushed. The way you beat Tenten at her own game, and that cool handspring you did, it was awesome. Thank you. He replied, trying to be polite. I'm sure you would have had a great fight too, but apparently the actual terrorists were the ones who stopped you getting through, so that wasn't really fair. Yeah. She looked really angrily at the floor for a moment. But still, I'm sure it wouldn't have been as cool as yours. I bet you'll be able to beat all the others, no problem. Sasuke thought. Did you see Lee's match? His and Gaara's was pretty awesome. It was. As good as yours. She seemed doubtful. As good as oh, it was way better. Sasuke scoffed. Actually, come here. He grabbed her hand. Presumably overwhelmed somewhat by the voluntary physical contact, she followed. Hey bro. Sasuke called out to Itachi. Show Sakura the Lee Gaara fight. He then flung an easily detected genjutsu at his brother that said make him look, like, really cool. And attractive. We have got to find you a girlfriend, Sasuke. Itachi's voice deadpanned into his head, even as he smiled benignly at Sakura and directed her to sit down and face the wall. Girlfriends later. Ninja stuff now. One day you will grow a pair and regret this decision. Maybe. But not yet. Dead. Itachi exclaimed. Dead. Echoed the sound team's sensei. Dead. Confirmed the third Hokage. The 3 and their guards were all found killed after they failed to report to T&I. Can I see them? Please. Their sensei's bottom lip trembled. I doubt you will find much solace in it. The third warned him. All 5 bodies appear to have been, he coughed, liquefied. The sound Jonin put his hand to his heart and gasped. How barbaric. Why would anyone do such a thing? Now the Yamanaka can't find out anything. Itachi grimaced. Fuck. If we didn't know they were guilty before, we sure do now. I should have stayed with them. Damn it, not handed them off. Then perhaps we would have lost you as well. Hiruzen put a palm on his shoulder. If our prime suspect is the one responsible, I would not like to risk you fighting him alone. I could have taken Snakeface. Itachi groused. The sound Jonin gasped. You don't mean, he lowered his voice to a whisper, Orochimaru. The dangerous, terrifying, devilishly attractive, member of the Sannin. Indeed. Hiruzen stated, grimly. Outrageous. The man exclaimed. First you accuse my students of treason, then you allow them to be murdered in the middle of your own village. I will be spreading the word of your incompetence to village sounds leader. Good day, sirs. He spun dramatically on his heel, flicked his hair, and walked away. That was definitely Orochimaru, wasn't it? Itachi watched his retreating back. I don't believe even he would be that bold. Hiruzen admitted. Orochimaru, walking out, could not believe he had just gotten away with that. Sasuke wondered how exactly he had ended up sat diametrically opposite to Hinata. He hadn't meant to. He had planned to make a show of solidarity out of sitting next to her, but there hadn't been enough room on the couch without getting uncomfortably close, and now he was awkwardly staring her down. Kakashi and Jiraiya were watching them both bemusedly, the latter regularly downing sips of sake. This is silly. Hinata said. I agree. Sasuke nodded. We're friends, right? I think we've reached that point, yes. She replied. So even though we have to fight in a month, we shouldn't be contentious about it. He continued. Exactly. She replied. They continued to stare each other down. Hey sensei. Sasuke asked, not looking away from Hinata. I don't suppose you know any Sharingan techniques that Itachi can't or won't teach me. While you're at it, sensei, Hinata said, also not breaking eye contact. Guy says you know a powerful lightning release jutsu. As lightning is my primary elemental affinity, I'd like to learn that, if it's possible. Really? I'd like to learn that too. Sasuke didn't blink. The Uchiha all primarily use fire, but Itachi has taught me the basics of lightning release. Kakashi held up a hand. Actually, I don't think I'll be teaching either of you anything. What? They both turned to him. I don't want to be seen as favoring one of you over the other. He explained. Especially with the obscene amount of gambling money that's going to be resting on this fight. No matter what I do, I'm going to get hitmen sent after me, but I'd rather limit the number if at all possible. Fair enough. Sasuke acknowledged. Gambling. Huh. Can you put me down for 100 ryo on myself? Hinata's gaze flicked to him, then back to Kakashi. Same for me. 200. Sasuke opened his mouth. Guys, did you know Suna doesn't actually have ramen? How have they survived? The tension was cut by Naruto jumping down on the sofa next to Jiraiya, to Kakashi's audible relief. Woo! Naruto! Shouted the Toad Sannin, decidedly drunk by this point. Hey, can you do that one jutsu with the pretty blonde girls and the conveniently PG steam? Naruto frowned. The sexy jutsu. Why would you want a bunch of naked girls at a party? Why wouldn't you want a bunch of naked girls at a party? Jiraiya belly laughed, and reached for the sake. Kakashi took it off him with a cough. Naruto, we were just discussing how training was going to work in preparation for the finals. Obviously I can't really join in when it comes to turning you all against each other, but I have no problem trying to help you take down Gaara. So you're mooching us off to other sensei. Sasuke rolled his eyes. How unlike you. Hey, Itachi has already told me he's not taking any missions on until after the exam specifically to help you. Kakashi admitted. And frankly he's, like, way better than me. As for Naruto. Eyes will do it, shouted Jiraiya, standing up in place before flipping down again. I will train the Naruto. Hesh my legacy. The most amassing ninja in ever. Yay. Naruto tried to inch away, but Jiraiya grabbed him and pulled him into a bear hug, resulting in a blubbering, complaining mess. And what about me? Asked Hinata, quietly. Well for you. Hinata. Came a shout. Might Guy slid amongst the group and knelt in front of the Hyuga. May I say that I was awed by your fight in the arena. He said, eyes closed, though forced upon you by outside agents, your commitment to using no ninjutsu was inspiring, and cleverly executed. Lee could learn a lot from you. Therefore, Guy shouted, grabbing one of her hands in his. With my students out of the tournament, I have no recourse but to assist you in your preparation for the finals. Kakashi says that as all of his team got further than mine, I am obligated as a forfeit to train you, and while I do not recall making such a bet, I am certain that my good friend and longtime rival would never lie to me. Sasuke looked across at a whistling Kakashi. You're a fucking despicable person, you know that. Thank you, Guy-sensei. Hinata answered the green-clothed Jonin, working her hand free of his and wiping it on Jiraiya. I would be honored to receive your training. Excellent. Guy stood and struck a pose. We commence tomorrow. I will not stop my daily training of your whole team, however, as that would not be sporting. Now, I must return to Lee's bedside. The doctors say it will take him 5 weeks to recover, but I have challenged him to make it 4. I will not abandon him to such an endeavor alone. Farewell. He vanished in a cloud of dust, not due to a body flicker, just from running off really fast. What do they feed him? Sasuke wondered. Get off me, old man. I'm not one of your smelly toads. Of course. You must drink with the toads. Waresh my contract. Jiraiya do not summon Gamabunta inside. Chapter 22. Training Montage 3. Gaara is fine. 10 years earlier. Are you sure this is okay? Neji asked, following Itachi into the woods. Sure. Itachi breezed. Relax, none of my clan is gonna know. He knows how to keep a secret. I wasn't sure it would be fair. Neji continued, still uncertain. You shouldn't have to find someone from your clan to help me train. Oh yeah, and who's gonna train you? Itachi replied. The main branch. Neji's silence was telling. He's not going to favor one of us over the other, he's cool like that. Itachi waved his friend off. And to be honest, we could both learn from him. He's like me, but cooler. High praise, coming from you. Neji drawled. They reached a clearing, and its other occupant stood up and turned to them with a smile. Hey Itachi. And you must be Neji. Uchiha Shisui crossed his arms. So, let me guess. You want to learn some cool new murder techniques. Present day. The month began. So I'm an official summoner now. Naruto confirmed, looking dubiously at the contract. I know you said it was important at the time, but was me drinking with Gamabunta, and then riding him around the Uchiha Gardens really part of the summoning contract? The drinking part was, the ride was just because he didn't like you. Jiraiya explained. Having recovered from his hangover, he and Kakashi had taken Naruto out into the forest for some private practice. So my 4-month ban from Sasuke's compound is for nothing. Naruto glared at him. Yeah, but it was worth it for the look on Fugaku's face. Grinned Jiraiya. We can get into the technicalities of summoning later, but first, strategy. Naruto wrinkled his nose. What's the point in strategy? It's a one-on-one fight. Think about it. Kakashi intervened. You're stood across the arena from Gaara. Gecko goes. Match start. What's your opening move? Naruto frowned. I punch him. Okay. So he blocks that with his sand wall. What next? Kakashi looked at him emotionlessly. I punch him again. He blocks that too. Unless you can get as fast as Hinata in these 30 days, punching him when he's prepared isn't going to do anything. Try something else. Naruto scowled. Fine. I use the Shadow Shuriken Jutsu. He makes a sand wall and blocks them. I make shadow clones. And what do they do? Punch him. He blocks them with a sand wall. And then destroys them. Naruto stomped his foot angrily. You can't just say that every time. I can. Kakashi said, levelly. Because he will. I'm not being contentious, Naruto, I'm trying to make you think. If you'd gone into the fight right now, you would have tried all of those things first to no effect, wasting time, effort, and chakra. Okay, so maybe strategizing is important. Naruto admitted. So think, boy. Jiraiya took over. The first step is to understand what you can do, and what your opponent can do. You've seen him fight, and it was against a strong enough opponent that you know he wasn't holding back. However, he's also seen you fight. As Kakashi had neatly explained, Gaara knows you don't know anything that can touch him. And that's bad. No, actually it's good. Oh, come on. In a normal fight you'd have to make a plan, then make a plan to counter their plan, then make a plan to counter their counter for your counter, up to about the power of 5. Unless it's Hashirama versus Madara, in which case it goes up to like 12. But as Gaara knows right now he could beat you, B seemed a very passive fighter against Lee, and C is completely insane. I doubt he'll bother, meaning you get to shape the fight. Naruto snorted. Gaara's not insane. The two Jonin looked at each other. Naruto, said Kakashi, slowly. What do you think of him? As a person? What? Gaara. Naruto shrugged. Yeah, Gaara's great. He's always smiling. He's got interesting political views, fun to talk to, kind. Why are you looking at me like that? Jiraiya twitched. Have you ever actually met Gaara? Trust me. Naruto placated. Gaara's probably out there right now doing some unquestionably nice things. Gaara stared. I wonder, what potential do you have? The red fox squealed, desperately trying to free itself. So that's what the fox says. Gaara mused. It's just I'm trying to put into practice what Naruto was talking about. I could kill you right now. Pour sand into every orifice of your body until your blood dried up. The animal was fortunately not capable of understanding that. It kept struggling. What would killing you achieve? Not much. It would be fun, a little. It wouldn't take much effort. But what else could you do? You're not very likely to grow to provide me with a fighting challenge. The fox let out a low moan. But maybe that was just an example. You're not a ninja, you're an animal. Gaara shifted forwards, and the sand moved the fox to make it meet his eyes. So, if I didn't want to kill you, what else could I do with you? He's probably, I dunno, playing with animals, or visiting Lee in the hospital. Oh crap, I need to do that. Naruto continued, making a mental note. Kakashi shared another glance with Jiraiya. Okay, so we'll skip the psychological evaluation part. Now before we get to brainstorming, there are 3 questions you have to answer. In the next 30 days, what can you learn? What do you need to learn? And who can you learn it from? Sasuke finished his stretches. Okay. Spill, Oni-chan. What's so important you brought me all the way out into the woods? Itachi pulled a sealing scroll from his pocket, smiling. What? Am I not allowed to spend personal time with my brother? We were already training every day, asshole. That is true. Itachi sat down with his scroll. Well, basically I don't trust Hinata's Byakugan while we're still in the village. If she was Neji she'd still be able to see us from tens of kilometers away, but I'm pretty sure she hasn't gotten that strong yet. You think she's spying on me? Sasuke asked. You haven't been spying on her. Itachi countered. I mean, I've tried. Sasuke sighed. But she always just stops moving and stares at me until I go away. The Byakugan is bullshit. It does have a lot more utility than our own dojutsu, admitted Itachi. But yes, I want this to be kept a secret from her. What are you teaching me? Sasuke asked, trying to contain his excitement. Itachi didn't do small. When recounting the fight against Zabuza, you complained that your kunai didn't have enough reach to fight him effectively. Itachi began. You expressed similar issues when fighting against Orochimaru, and against Tenten. Against Hinata you will have a slightly different problem. Your ideal melee range is exactly where she wants you to be. I don't suppose you can beat her in a taijutsu spar. I've almost beaten her. Sometimes. Sasuke hedged. And if you almost survive against a hostile force, you've still died. Itachi pointed out. You need a way to keep her out of melee range that doesn't cede her momentum or control over the fight. And what would you recommend? Sasuke asked. Itachi gave a small smile Sasuke was all too familiar with. Tell me, how much did the academy teach you about Kenjutsu? Hinata fell back under Guy's punches, but was unable to stop the sweep that put her on the floor. The sky was overcast, and the grass was wet with rain. She coughed once. Impressive work, my young student. You grow stronger and faster by the day. She grimaced and got back to her feet, returning to the gentle fist-opening stance. Again. The fires of your youth burn brightly. Guy acknowledged, but he frowned. Though your motivation seems to come less from enthusiasm and more from grim determination. Why is that? Why does it matter? She asked, defensively. Guy took a long look at her, then shifted out of stance. Because it just might decide the outcome of the entire battle. Rest for a moment. She sighed and drew herself back up to full height, trying to stabilize her breathing. She was used to being good at taijutsu. She was better than Lee, honest. He just cheated and didn't feel pain. Guy. Guy was better than her. Way better. Understanding why you fight is almost as important as being able to do so. Guy impressed. The battle of the flesh is tied deeply to the battle of the mind. A lack of conviction saps your strength, hollow beliefs make your defenses crack under pressure, and thoughtless determination ruins your accuracy. The last is especially important for one with your style, and unfortunately it's where I fear you yourself are the most affected. I know what I'm doing. She bit back. And why I'm doing it. Is that so? Guy crouched down so he could meet her eyes. Tell me. In a matter of weeks you will go out to face your teammate in combat. Why? To win the tournament. Why? To pass the Chunin exams. Why? I don't understand. No reason is a wrong reason. Guy reassured. Desiring the glory or the admittedly substantial cash prize isn't exactly noble, but it's as true a reason as any other. Is it for the sense of the achievement? Does it open up new options? Is it part of a larger goal? Hinata thought about it, looking down to the floor. If I beat Sasuke, I can take part in up to 2 more fights against strong opponents, which will help me improve. It also makes it more likely I will be promoted to Chunin after. That rank means I get to take on harder missions, but also. She debated whether or not to reveal the next part, but then decided it wasn't much a secret. Certain secrets of my clan are sealed away, even from me, that require certain seniority to access. There's a vault, under my compound. Neji shouldn't have known owl summoning. He couldn't have learned some of the things her father had mentioned. I'm only allowed in once I turn 18, or once I reach the rank of Chunin. Guy nodded in understanding. Pursuit of strength. Some say noble, others disagree. But go deeper. Do you want power for power's sake? Or is there another goal you need power to achieve? Hinata sighed in defeat and resolved to lay all her cards on the table. Neji. I need to become strong enough to beat him. Guy stood back up. And now the most important question. How hard are you willing to work to achieve that goal? I would level mountains. Hinata declared. I would build skyscrapers and destroy cities, swim to the depths of the oceans and walk the breadth of the world. I would work until my bones turned to ash if it meant I could bring him down. Lightning flashed to punctuate her words. Guy leapt back and struck a pose. Yosh. Now we have reached the heart of the issue, your true determination has been found. Come, young Hyuga, ride the wave of your realization, and attack. You're going to teach me to sword fight. Sasuke's face lit up. Itachi nodded. Not exclusively, but yes. That Sharingan means you can definitely pick it up in a matter of weeks, and I know a few jutsu that couple well with it. It will probably take you a little longer to be able to form hand seals with one free hand, but you will be able to transition from kenjutsu to ninjutsu, taijutsu quickly enough by the time you get into the fight. Sasuke didn't even try to hide his glee. Sword fighting was Itachi's thing. Itachi was teaching him Itachi's thing. 13 years of hero worship had led up to this moment. Before we begin, I have a confession to make. Itachi held a hand up, then put the other one down on his sealing scroll. A couple months ago, you stole one of the 7 ninja swordsman's swords. You are definitely the youngest of us to do that. You are not, however, the first. He put some chakra into the seal, and in a puff of smoke appeared 2 thin blades. Is that? Sasuke was in awe. Kiba. Itachi nodded. Fangs. Or Raito, if it makes you uncomfortable that they have the same name as your Inuzuka classmate. Admittedly, I got them from someone who was definitely not one of the 7. Just some misjonin who thought he was much better than he really was. Their actual owner was killed by Might Dai. Guy never mentioned he fought the 7. Sasuke frowned. Not Guy. Itachi corrected. Dai. Guy's father. It was the 3rd Great Ninja War. The 7 ninja swordsmen all took to the battlefield at once and Dai, the absolute maniac, opened the 8th gate and beat all of them in the most dramatic moment of the entire war. He died immediately afterwards but, damn. I have it recorded on Sharingan, actually. Weren't you, like, 4 or 5 when the war ended? Sasuke pointed out. Itachi gave him a look. I activated my Sharingan after my first kill, in that war. I was 4. Right, you're amazing, I get it. Sasuke rolled his eyes. Does that mean you've also copied how to use these things? Oh, you bet. Itachi picked one up and handed it over. You're too small to use both, but one should be perfect for you. Sasuke took it as Itachi continued explain. Raito is permanently imbued with lightning release chakra. Don't ask me how they did it, which first of all means it boosts lighting jutsu if you can manage to cast them with your offhand, and second of all means it's really fucking sharp. I know you're used to fighting with lethal weapons, but please don't try and decapitate your teammate with it. Got it. Sasuke looked down the length of the blade, using his Sharingan to better analyze its details and dimensions. Then he snorted. You had Uchiha clan rules engraved on them. Itachi nodded, grinning. By the same guy that put Big Bloody Cleaver on Zabuza's sword. Tenten's dad, actually. He was both horrified and in stitches at the prospect. We should start a campaign of engraving derogatory nicknames on all the swords. Well, Samahata is currently held by Kisame and is technically sentient, but sure, aim big. Itachi picked up the other sword and got into position. Now watch me with the Sharingan. I'm going to run through some of the basic kata, then we're going to start hitting each other. We're going to spar with some of the sharpest swords in existence. You're not good enough to hit me and I'm good enough not to hit you. That's fair enough. Sitting down, Sasuke powered up his eyes and watched the show. Temari let herself into the Sand siblings' apartment with a sigh, after a long day of training. Leaf had lent them the place to stay, the cage's name opening plenty of doors. When she walked into the communal room, she paused. Gaara, she asked. What is this? The host of an incredibly dangerous demonic beast smiled at her from across the room. It's a fox. I see that. Temari looked down. The animal in the center of the carpet looked absolutely terrified. Noticing that Gaara's sand had finally drifted away from it, it scampered away, not towards the exits, but to Temari, curling around her legs and shivering. It's house trained. Gaara explained. I taught it that if it tries to escape it gets hurt. That's nice. Temari looked towards the room's other occupant. Kankuro shook his head in silent denial. So this was just Gaara being Gaara, then. Is this because of Naruto? Temari asked. You know, because it's a fox, and I didn't think of that, actually. Gaara replied, conversationally. Although now that I think about it, Shukaku may be pushing me towards related imagery. Oh, good. Temari leaned down, awkwardly, and pet the fox. It moved closer to her. Why, exactly, did you bring a fox home, brother? I was trying to think of uses for it other than killing it for my own amusement. Gaara explained. And I thought you might like it. Oh. Temari nodded. Right. Thank you. You're welcome. Smiled Gaara. Then I'll just. Temari gestured. Take it into my room. Sure. Gaara replied, noncommittally, and went back to staring out the window. Temari picked up the very limp fox and walked off with it, depositing it on her bed and flopping down next to it. She began staring dead-eyed at the wall, trying to figure out what had just happened. Kankuro followed her in soon after. Something's fucked up with Gaara. He summarized. Yeah, no shit. Temari agreed. This place has done something to him. Do you think it's Uzumaki? He said that the Kyuubi's presence was making Shukaku more restless. Kankuro pointed out. That doesn't make you adopt a fucking fox. And how did he even train a fox? I didn't even know you could domesticate those. It's Gaara. Temari reminded him. And that wasn't what I meant. Naruto's nice to him. He doesn't notice or doesn't care that Gaara's a complete monster. He tries to make friends with him anyway, and Gaara's actually responding to that. My insane little brother's finally getting a hang of things. Kankuro shook his head. I'd give Naruto a kiss if this wasn't the worst possible time for him to be doing it. Temari understood what he was insinuating. Gaara won't defect. We'd know if he stopped following orders because he'd be killing everyone he saw until he met another Jinchuriki and they annihilated each other. That's been true so far. But if Naruto gives him a different reason not to kill people. Temari gave her brother a searching look. Despite how he sometimes acted, Kankuro was a lot smarter than he looked. Do we report this to Baki? He would only make it worse if he tried to intervene. I vote we keep it to ourselves. Kankuro reasoned. Let Gaara learn some empathy over the month, bring Konoha to its knees, then reap the rewards of Naruto's friendship. God, you make us sound like the monsters. Temari shivered a little. We're ninja. We follow orders. Kankuro reasoned. He pointed at the fox. Temari realized she'd absently been stroking it. Are you going to get rid of that? And tell Gaara I didn't want his gift. I choose life, thanks. Tamari snorted. Besides, it's actually kinda cute. Oh 4. You're really going to get attached to it. Fuck off, it's a present from my little brother. She pouted and shifted closer to the fox. Konkuro sighed, and turned away. I'm going to work on my puppets. You have to figure out how to feed that thing. And I'm not picking up its waste. She flagged him off as he left, sighing and turning to her new pet. It blinked up at her. I'm going to have to think of a name for you. Chapter 23. Mandatory Christmas Special. All I want for Christmas is you. Will you be the savior of the broken? Dun dun. Dun dun. Do when I was a young. Naruto, shut the fuck up. Sasuke dove onto Naruto, tackling him from his position on top of the piano, in what he probably thought was a seductive lounge. Hinata continued to idly play the keys and sing to herself. It was Christmas Eve, and Team 7 had been released from training to go enjoy the festivities or whatever. I don't care, I have books to read. Jiraiya released a Christmas special and I have my priorities straight. Hey Hinata, I didn't know you could play an instrument. Naruto mentioned, rolling around with Sasuke. Sometimes I needed to do something so I didn't have to think, but was too exhausted to train. Hinata explained. Edgy. Sasuke remarked, punching. Awesome. Can I learn? Naruto asked, kicking. Well, you'd need to spend a lot of time practicing. I have shadow clones, Naruto dismissed, freeing himself from his grapple with Sasuke and jumping up onto the piano stool, having to press incredibly close to Hinata, not that she minded in the slightest. I can practice all day and night, with 5 people at once. Show me the notes, I wanna learn Smash Mouth. Glad to see Hinata's going for some last-minute Santa Karma. Sasuke remarked, rubbing his wrist and standing up. Not sure if it counts this close to Christmas Day. Hinata glowered at nothing in particular. Sure. Santa. Generous man. Sasuke gave her a funny look. You don't get any presents. I mean, I understand Naruto because he's naughty all the time, but you always seem polite and stuff. As one, this two on the piano stool turned round to look at him. Sasuke, do you? Naruto looked like he was trying not to laugh. Do you believe in Santa? What do you mean believe in him? He's real. Sasuke blinked. Naruto burst into laughter. Ahahaha. Hey, screw you, he's real. Sasuke defended. Hinata, back me up. Hinata. The Hyuga girl just looked down at the floor and shook her head, looking like she was desperately suppressing a laugh. Sasuke, how would Santa possibly deliver presents to all the children? Know exactly what to get them. Duh. He's some really powerful ninja who just wants to help out. Sasuke replied, looking uncertain. And he only does our village. It never snows in Suna and most of the other villages teach their kids to murder cats. Then why doesn't he help the village when it's in danger? Naruto challenged. He doesn't want to hurt people, he just wants to give presents. What about all the kids who are total dicks all year but still get presents? Santa is merciful. But not to Naruto. I mean, he is Naruto. Hey, screw you, Sasuke. Hinata sighed. I have been living alone for the last 5 years. I do not prank, insult, or hurt anyone. I receive a monthly trust fund. I do not get Christmas presents. Ever. I get a card from Iruka-sensei and a card from the old man. Naruto added. That's it. That's what happens if we don't have parents. No, because, Sasuke was looking between them. Because that would. Santa isn't real. His 2 teammates looked at each other. Looked back. Naruto started laughing again. Tenten looked up from the counter to see who had just entered the shop, and froze. Sabaku no Gaara walked in, and began to pace the aisles. She tried to contain her panic, unsure whether to be relieved or annoyed it was her manning the shop instead of her civilian father. Gaara, with all the focus of a sniper about to take a shot, was scanning the weapons on display, sand around him twitching in the air. Tenten had seen his fight against Lee, watched him roadblock and eventually overcome one of the strongest genin she knew. The power didn't scare her, she knew there were plenty of jonin and even chunin that could dismantle Lee without much effort. But the way he had done it. His attacks had been oppressive, overwhelming, but never vicious. Gaara had seemed apathetic. The kind of monster that would kill dozens without even knowing to think he should care. And now he was in her shop. What did he want? He'd never needed weapons before. Was he here for her? Not satisfied with Lee, could he be going after the whole team? Had Sai already been sent to the hospital, crushed and bleeding, with sand filling his? I'd like to purchase this, please. You'll never kill her. Tenten blinked. Gaara had walked up to her counter, and deposited a weapon. A purchase. He continued. This is a shop, correct? I do sometimes struggle with societal conventions such as signs. No, yes, we are a. That. She looked down. It was technically a war fan. Indeed. Gaara nodded. I think my sister would like it. But it's. Tenten knew it wasn't sensible to try and deny the demon, but it's pink. I made it as a joke 3 years ago. It is of impeccable quality. And pink is Temari's favorite color. Gaara reasoned. Tenten shook her head and gave up. Cash or credit? Itachi was sat in the Uchiha's other living room when Sasuke kicked the door down. Itachi. Sasuke shouted, panting. Sasuke. Itachi replied. Santa. Sasuke accused. Santa. Itachi agreed. There was a pause. Itachi looked at Sasuke. Sasuke looked at Itachi. Itachi snorted. Umotherfucker. I can't believe it took you this long. I am 13. I know. This has got to be a record. You suck. Sasuke jumped on him. Naruto and Hinata are in the other room laughing their asses off. I've been changing what I said he was like every single year, how did you not notice? That's it. I'm massacring the Uchiha clan. In another room, Fugaku looked across at Makoto with a frown. She shrugged, smiling, and went back to her rapping. Later that night, we really doing this? Sasuke hissed, tightening the straps on his bag as he ran across the rooftops. It kinda feels like invading her privacy. Naruto looked across at him with a grin. What? Like Santa did every Christmas. You shut up. Look, Hinata doesn't get presents. Naruto pointed out. Period. And I'm not having it. Now I have actual money. I've been sending stuff to all my other friends, but I thought you two were sorted, being rich, so I didn't bother, but if she isn't, it needs emergency last-minute measures. Sasuke gave him a funny look. Like breaking into her house. Emergency last-minute measures. They came up to the Hyuga compound. All its walls and gates were decorative at best, not much point in terrestrial defenses against ninja, it was trivial to enter the grounds, and from there, the main house. She doesn't even lock her doors. Naruto remarked, before creeping into the living room. Oh damn, she doesn't even have a tree. Sure she does, whispered Sasuke, getting into it. I think I saw a pine or two in her gardens. Naruto grinned. Oh that's naughty. I like it. Ahem. They both froze. Then turned. Forsooth, one of Hinata's owls, was perched up above her fireplace, watching them. No. I have been instructed by my lady to alert her if there are any intruders to her compound while she is sleeping. It mentioned. Then it clicked its beak. But this place is so drab and boring, frankly Spartan, and I disapprove. Not to mention, I don't believe my lady has been pleasantly surprised in over 5 years. He turned his head 180 degrees so it was facing the wall. Do try to limit the chaos, if you would. Naruto exhaled. Then looked at Sasuke. Sasuke chucked him a coin pouch. Send out some shadow clones, buy some tinsel and baubles. How much tinsel? The Uchiha grinned. Too much. Oh yes sir. And I'll go find a suitable tree to cut down. Check if there's any bugs or mice you can give to Forsooth. Ooh. Good shout. Now I don't know where I can find a reindeer, but hear me out. Christmas Day. Hinata awoke. Report. There were 0 hostile intruders during your sleep, ma'am. Forsooth reported, sat dutifully at her bedside. May I dispel? Celebrations are occurring at the Angel Mountains, and I'd rather not miss them. Sage creatures celebrate Christmas. Hinata asked, sitting up in bed and stretching. Our cultures do tend to mimic human culture. Forsooth admitted. If you'd like I could give you a history lesson on. It's fine. She got out of bed. You go home to your family. Forsooth didn't wince as much as he normally would at a statement like that. Thank you. Merry Christmas, Lady Hinata. Merry Christmas, Forsooth. Quote. And please put some clothes on. Nobody is watching and pajamas are uncomfortable. Forsooth sighed, and vanished. Hinata shook her head, walking along the corridor down to her kitchen and idly making the hand seals for the Byakugan. It took effect when she reached the balcony above her living room, vision spreading to encompass her entire compound and what? Her jaw dropped. First of all, the sacred pine tree, tended for 5 generations, had been neatly cut at the base and buried in the hole that had apparently been made in her floor. It was covered in tinsel and baubles. In fact, there was tinsel everywhere, stretched along the ceiling, the mantelpiece, spider webbing the walls. There was a brown Labrador laying on the floor with a pair of reindeer ears fastened to its head, and red paint on its nose. There were about 3 packages of mince pies and carrots strewn about the floor, empty. It looked like they'd been eaten by the dog. Filled with morbid curiosity more than anything else, Hinata walked through the chaos and crouched before the tree, where 4 small wrapped boxes awaited her, in orange, purple, white and blue. One contained a letter from Sasuke, and a signed copy of 15 Reasons Why the Byakugan Can Go Fuck Itself, by Madara Uchiha. One contained the novel, Flight of the Owls, from Itachi. Alright. Kakashi had sent her one of Jiraiya's works, Gutsy something or other, because of course he had. Although the main character in this one was called Naruto, so maybe it deserved a read. Naruto himself. He'd gotten her a hat. It was one of the really big fluffy ones with the pom-poms dangling from either side and I3 Konoha on it in capital letters. Inside his letter, he explained that he thought she should have something to go with her trademark coat. It couldn't have been more than 3 ryo at one of the Christmas markets. It was perfect. Hinata leaned back onto her haunches and shook her head, cradling the presents. There were tears in her eyes. With a single controlled wingbeat, Forsooth glided down to one of the planetoids in the Angel Mountains. Good morning. Kudos. Uncle Forsooth. The young owl turned to him and hopped over, trying his best to orient himself for a hug. Merry Christmas. I didn't think you'd make it. Merry Christmas, nephew. And did you think I'd miss it? Forsooth chuckled, reaching into his feathers. In fact, I brought you a present. Kudo's eyes widened. Really? From the humans? Forsooth nodded, pulling out a wrapped package and putting it down. From Lady Hinata's team, in fact. Kudos tore into the package, and gasped. A dead mouse. They know me so well. The Uchiha compound was alive. Children running through the streets, throwing snowballs, parents pretending they hadn't considered taking over the village a few years ago, everyone having fun. Even in the clan head's house, Sasuke was having a better time than usual. It's nicer when I know it's from you. He'd told his parents, with a smile. Itachi had, predictably gotten a card from his younger brother, in which Sasuke had apologized that he had no idea what Itachi could possibly want that Sasuke could give. He had them quoted Naruto, who had once said that, there's no such thing as too many explosive tags, and included one of those in the card. He had even said it to go off, which Itachi had congratulated him on after disarming it. Less predictably, however, was the small package Itachi had found on his bedside table, that had managed to get there without him noticing it. Encoded inside was the message. Sup Itachi. Merry Christmas. You will not believe the shit I went to get a shadow clone into this village. You will find enclosed my present to you, a signed copy of 15 Reasons Why the Sharingan Can Go Fuck Itself, by Hashirama Senju. You're welcome. As you so thoughtlessly neglected to get me one, I took the liberty of stealing your favorite book. As it's been a while, I forgot exactly where you kept it, so you may find that I have completely reshuffled your entire bookshelf. Funny that. Catch you when I'm in town next month. You know who. P.S. I also took the liberty of giving Hinata my gift under your name. Sorry about that. Itachi had chuckled, burned the letter, and gone about with his morning. Tamari lovingly stroked her hands across her Christmas present. It's perfect, she whispered. Gaara smiled. Kankuro didn't say anything, but he was inspecting his new poison set with similar enthusiasm. Haku woke up to find a letter from Naruto and a mini keychain version of Kubikiribocho. He squealed. Naruto woke up far too late, stifling a yawn. Lie-ins were rare enough that he had no issues taking as much advantage as he could of this one. Bleary-eyed, he shifted out of bed, moving towards his bathroom for a morning leak. At which point he tripped up. Sprawled out on the floor, rubbing his head, he looked up to see what the hell he had tripped on. He was certain he hadn't left that many ramen boxes out. His jaw dropped. His room was awash with presents. Boxes, cards, bags, packages, dozens of the things. Of course there was the card from Iruka, but the Hokage had got him a box that was, upon closer inspection, full of some awesome cool three-pronged kunai. Sasuke had got him a book on Uzumaki heritage. Hinata had got him a really familiar scarf. But there was also something from Kakashi, from Jiraiya, from Haku. His classmates as well. Ino Shikacho, Tentenli and Sai, Kiba, Shino, Sakura. There was even a big box that, from the stamp, had come all the way from Wave, with thanks from Inari and his family. It contained a sample of Wave's trade goods that Naruto was encouraged to share amongst all his friends to build publicity. And there were apologies in the cards. People sending in their seasonal greetings with addendums like, "I was only nasty to you because my parents told me to, but now I know why, it's just dumb. So I'm gonna stop that." Or, "There's no way the nine-tailed fox would clean my gardens with such gusto. So I'm sorry for treating you like it." Or, "You're not as much an asshole as I thought you were." About 7 cards in, Naruto dropped them from lifeless fingers, and went back to staring out at the massive collection of gifts. Presents. People had gotten him presents. People cared. He flopped down on his back, and didn't even try to stop the tears. That's it for this part. If you enjoyed it, then like, share and subscribe for the next video, as it's going to be more interesting, and also check out my other playlists. Hope you would like them too.